contact already. The number 3 goes sideways fire into the wall. And he's already bounced off the side of the car next to him. I'm not sure if they just wobbled around a little. Yeah, absolutely. I think that was a...
Starting the season off, you can't go wrong with sunny Southern California. But it'll be more dirt, dust, and grime than it will swimsuits and beaches, because it's time to get ready for the 70 laps of Moreno Valley Mall, and you'll see it all live here on Genisus Extreme. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Joey Atterbury, and behind the scenes is our director, Daniel Costello. Joey, I am really looking forward to this one because, I mean, we're already nerds for racing, but when it comes to vintage racing, I know you and I just, we love it.
It's pretty cool to be able to take something from the past and have the digital version of it and still be able to go out there and race it. And we're not only talking about the cars that we're going to be seeing today, but also this track. Unfortunately, it's no longer around, but here in the virtual world, it is still around. And so therefore, we're going to use it.
Indeed. Racing at Riverside as we take a look at the schedule, starting things off, as we said, at the Moreno Valley Mall, 70 laps. But then it's going to be off to Elkhart Lake for Road America, track thankfully that we do still have. Circuit Mont Tremblant, which is still around, but it's being threatened a little bit. Hopefully that sticks around up in Canada. Then Lime Rock Park, that should be an absolute blast over there. That short little circuit with Bridgehampton, another one that unfortunately is no longer around up around New York. In fact, I think on Long Island, as Watkins Glen International and then Sonoma Raceway will round them out for our 7 races. A spectacular calendar for sure. And the drivers are going to have a fun time out here as we take a look at the circuit. And one of its distinctive features, this long backstretch. And of course, that sweeping first corner. This track, Joey, sure has a lot of those fast and flowing corners. I have to imagine being smooth with your car, especially these old vehicles, probably going to be key today.
I mean, they are muscle cars, and when you think of muscle cars, you think of drag racing, you think of the top speed and how fast they can go. Well, here at Riverside, they are going to be going fast, but they are also going to have to change directions, not only through that back straightaway and off into that extremely fast kink, but I remember watching practice and qualifying through turn 2, which is this right-hander right here entering the S's. It is so cool to watch them just huck these big old cars into that section.
70s Trans Am certainly evokes a lot of memories for a lot of people. These are the cars that many of us had and posters on our walls growing up. The AMC Javelin, the Chevy Camaro Z28, the Dodge Challenger, the Ford Mustang Boss. We've got the Plymouth Cuda out there. One of my personal favorites, the Pontiac Firebird. And I mean, speaking of things that aren't around anymore, Pontiac, of course, also no longer with us, but it's going to be a lot of classic cars, a bit of difficulty, I'm sure, to try and wield them, but the drivers have had plenty of practice, and they should be getting onto the circuit shortly here in just a moment. They've already had the qualifying session, and thankfully, one of the big things is the track seems to have cooled down since that Q session. It was 122 Fahrenheit, Joey. It is now down to a shade under 100 Fahrenheit.
And when we talk about the big, heavy cars, you don't want that track temperature. Really, you don't want any of that super high ambient temperature. The hotter it is, the less horsepower they make, the more the drivers are going to have to work and kind of back off of those brake sections, cool those tires down. But we are here in Southern California. It only gets but so cold out here. And for reference, this racetrack is about halfway between LA and Palm Springs. If y'all have heard of Thermal Club, an IndyCar starting out there, we're basically smack halfway between LA and Thermal Club.
Interesting. I actually did not know that. So a bit of a sad shame that this is now gone. It was a really fascinating and character-filled track. Went through its own bit of changes before, unfortunately, it was torn down for the Moreno Valley Mall, which now sits there along with a suburban little cul-de-sac in the midst of it. But at least, thankfully, we have fans like us that want to see it race once again and see it recreated here in the virtual world with a bunch of drivers ready to try and tackle it. In fact, I believe this is one of the places that held F1 extremely briefly if I remember correctly. So it's seen a lot. NASCAR used to race here as well. Sports car racing, a regular staple at this track on top of things. And of course, Trans Am being one of the big names to be seen racing around this circuit. They're trying to make it as old school as possible while it is a 70-lap race, which is going to last us just around 2.5 hours. A lot of the rules mimic what you saw back in the day. And in fact, there is no pit speed limit these drivers are going to have to adhere to, although they do have rules about trying to be safe in and out of pit lane. If you cause an accident, you will find yourself potentially getting a penalty, Joey. But again, one of the things that the virtual world allows us to do is we don't have those pit crews to worry about. We can go back to those old school rules.
Yeah, it's kind of standardized for everybody out there, and we're still getting these shots of the track. And as we scroll around and really look at this vintage track along with the vintage rules, like you were saying, I can't believe how similar Sonoma looks through the start section through turn one. And a lot of these other sections, they just kind of draw cues off of a lot of racetracks that we actually know and have very familiar experience with. But I love this S section. Another part that I didn't mention here about Riverside, not only is it fast, but you got to be good on the brakes. You've got these really fast sections, but you also have to slow these big old cars down. And when you talk about brakes and these old vintage cars, well, they didn't really have the biggest brake systems. They are upgraded from what they were in terms of a factory. You know, they are a race car, but they are not what they are nowadays, and you definitely got to pay attention to how long those brake zones are and how fast you're going in that top speed section.
Exactly. And that's one thing I honestly did love about that era is, yes, they had souped them up. Yes, they were purpose-built race cars, but they were very close to the race on Sunday, sell on Monday sort of ethos that you heard a lot in NASCAR. And this kind of was a bit like the NASCAR of road racing, even during this era with these cars out there. There was just so much power, not as much down to the agility of these machines, although they have a little bit more than maybe you would have expected. So they are still pretty good at going through the twisty bits, but it'll all be about those corner exits here today to try and set yourself up down into what few passing zones we're going to be having at this circuit. This, of course, is a league that races together regularly, starting the new Genisus Extreme Trans Am Racing Challenge. But the HRSC does all sorts of vintage racing through various sims and does a really cool job of trying to recreate some of these classic eras that cars raced against one another. And some of our favorite drivers taking to the track out there today. Should be getting the drivers in soon. They are just going through the drivers meeting with this being such a close-knit group. Of course, they always have that pre-race drivers meeting just to make sure everybody understands how they're expected to behave.
I know that you had mentioned all of the cars, but everybody always has their favorites out there. You had mentioned the Firebird kind of being a popular one. And I'm going through this entry list. It looks like the Chevy Camaro Z28 has the most entries with 15 of them out there. And then next up is that Ford Mustang Boss 302. Joe, I got to say, I'm a little partial. I didn't get to drive the old Boss 302, but I did get to drive the rendition when it came back out in about 2010 or so in the Grand Am series, the Boss 302R. And then it looks like the next popular is that car, your favorite, the Pontiac Firebird. There's 9 of those cars out there. So it looks like between the Camaro, the Boss, and the Firebird, those are the popular 3.
Indeed. So we'll see if it proves to be the fast one, though, is the other question in that as they go to the different tracks and they have some variety there. Sounds like the grid has been set. So I believe we're going to be going through our starting order here today with Devin Brain on the pole, Jerne Simoncic in second, Oskari Kantanen starting third, and then Franek Godrecki going to round out your first 4. Then it's Jesper Patterson in 5th today, Nicholas Hillebrand in P6, Nicholas Kirsten will be 7th, Tom D. Joey will round out your top 8.
And then here across the page in 9th is Darren Andrews. Reese Gardner, a good buddy, back there in 10th. Matt Wright starting in 11th. Jackson Robillard here in 12th place. Got Liam Dolan in 13th. Mantis Iskanitis here in 14th. John Kenny 15th. And Austin Birchfield in 16th, Joe.
Mike Mallon will start P17. Robin DeVos will be P18. Then in row 10, Larry Salmonen will be flanked by David Baka-Kaladon. After that, you've got, I know it says Snatch Tractor, but it's Nikolai Banbeck out there, Mario Mariano, Steph Hermans, and Paul Stersov's 23rd, and 24th.
And we've got Chris Gordon here starting 25th. Igor Polikov in 26th. David Purchase in 27th. Filippo Marazzi in 28th. Steve Carman starting in 29th. Mark Johnson back here in 30th. Gerard Rion in 31st. And Declan Brush in 32nd.
Last few on the field, Mike Honcho starts in 33rd today with Fan Fleur in the 34th, as Jonathan D starts 35th, and then Chris Okuda 36 in his Javelin. And finally, last one on the field going to be Bruno Chacon in his Pontiac Firebird number 11. And we're moments away from the green flag for today's race here. Round 1 out of 7 that they are going to be competing in this brand new Genisus Extreme Trans Am Racing Challenge. Really, really looking forward to seeing what kind of racing we get today. Definitely an endurance race, as the warm-up has now started. Drivers just getting adapted to what is a slightly cooler track before they get on their way. This, again, shows you how long this backstretch is before they flick down into the kink and into turn 9.
So fast on the top speed, and these cars are not light. Just the commitment going into that fast left corner, and then you get the flames spitting out of the exhaust through the final turn number 9. And what's cool about this turn, look at how much banking there is. You're just really leaning on the left side of the car, waiting for the front end to bite, and into the pits actually comes this car for a mock kind of entry. Try to time out your pit stop later.
So much elevation change throughout this track. Definitely unique with that banking as well. Something I think we're starting to see a bit more return on road courses, which makes me happy because I feel like it's certainly an aspect that's been missing in some of them. Devin Braum in the number 22 car on the pole position, as we mentioned, and up through these various hills in California. Definitely looks like Southern California, with all the dirt and brown grass around. It was often how this place looked whenever drivers visited. So you're not going to be sliding off into wet grass, but it will be dusty. That can be dragged onto the track. You have to be watching out for that through some of these corners where drivers will be kind of pushing the limit and maybe kicking up some of that.
On the back straightaway into this fast left-hand kink. And you see it is flat out through there. Just huck the car in there and then stand on the brakes. And this was the corner I was just mentioning, turn number 9 here. And I have a feeling we're going to see a few different lines through there. I saw somebody hugging the short way around earlier. This is definitely the longer way around. And then once again, back into pit lane. Make sure you got everything ready for the race.
I think for a lot of drivers, these are just simply reconnaissance laps, just feeling things out. Then they're going to be sent out on a warm-up lap. It'll be a rolling start in this series, and they'll have time to try and prep the cars as they do their little lap around during pacing. You can see we will have yellows in particular sectors as well, instead of the full course yellows that drivers will need to be wary of in this race, and be sure not to cause an accident. They can come back if they have an accident and try to repair the car, but it is up to them to try and safely return that car to pit lane. So either you take the DNF and park it, or you try and hope that you can manage to wheel the thing and it has enough power underneath it to try and return to pit lane. Watching from Tom D on board his Camaro, just get a little slippery off of what I think is turn 7 there before it comes back around into a bit of a curved entry into turn 8 that'll dump you back onto the backstretch.
through kind of the 3 hairpin section. This is the final of these 3 slow corners. Just a little bit too much speed. You see there, easily can slide off of the racetrack here. These cars are big, they are heavy, and you definitely got to be careful of how long the brake zones are. They don't act like these new modern cars where you can just go charging into it, and we're going to be watching it all day long as these drivers are going to wrestle with both the heat, the grip on the racetrack, and just keeping all 4 wheels on the concrete.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the big thing is making sure you stay on the pavement and that you're keeping your speed up out there. You don't want to lose time behind your rivals. Limiting mistakes going to be a big part of driving these big beastly machines and entry into pit lane. Someone taking look like there's actually an oval circuit here too. Almost looked like one of them were kind of cutting through there to make their way back in and had to wait patiently. Salmonen in his Camaro as well, just behind what looks like one of our Barracudas. Actually, that might be one of the Javelins just in front of him. And a vintage livery, but not quite vintage enough, I don't think. That's the Days of Thunder paint on that car.
Yeah, the City Chevrolet just in front of Salmonen here, so it's pretty amusing, but that's also one of the things I love about the virtual world, Joe, is that, yes, we have the kind of vintage historic liveries, but you also get to be creative, and not only with the names that we've seen, but definitely the paint schemes as well.
These do get up to a pretty good clip around here, at around 160 miles an hour. Remember, this is an old machinery too. That might sound unimpressive considering GT3 cars now can do that themselves. But remember, these are cars that don't have all that modern technology, so they get moving. They have some grunt underneath them. This is the Barracuda, so that was the Javelin that we were looking at before with the City Chevrolet on it. But gonna try and see if Reese Gardner can get himself a good finish. And we, of course, have a little bit of bias there. He's one of our cohorts behind the mic, often doing commentary. So we always want to see our fellow broadcaster be able to show these drivers he's still got it.
Just look at how big that Barracuda is. Now, a lot of these cars are pretty large, but that Plymouth definitely on the larger side. Same thing with this green Dodge Challenger. Definitely a large automobile. And as we're watching these cars go around the racetrack, something that I am noticing, the really fast guys, man, they've got a ton of yaw angle going into these fast corners. You have to be able to drive these things a bit sideways, kind of. Sometimes you got to turn right in order to go left.
I'm very curious what that's going to do to the tire wear, though, over the course of the race. We understand that the tires do go away pretty significantly and overheat. And the more you're sliding them, the more they're going to start to pick up that friction, that temperature, and should lose some of their effectiveness. So some of the fast guys may be fast on a single lap that way, but I don't know if they'll be able to stay fast by the end of the stint.
This literally looks like going down the 405 right here in Southern California. You even got the lanes painted on the ground. That back straightaway is just so long, and then hauling through that fast kink there. Man, this was a cool racetrack.
Daniel's brave to set up a camera there at that kink. I hope he doesn't mind losing it by the end of this race with how many times it's going to get run over just at the inside of that apex. Outside of turn 9, you got that wall, very oval-like. I did mention they do have 2 ovals, a short and a long version that used to be able to be run. This layout, which is obviously meant to kind of mimic the 70s, by that stage they did not have it completed through there. Well, it was completed, but they had taken it away by this point. It used to be a little bit of a tighter final corner there at the end. So Dave Purchase in his Ford Mustang Boss 302, also coming downhill through turn 7 himself, just trying to hug that inside curb before he'll switch back around and come over the crest that leads you down into turn 8. You mentioned the similarities to Sonoma. Much like modern Sonoma now has the cut across that NASCAR uses, they also kind of had that version here in this track to shorten it out without the turn 7A hairpin. Looks like our session is ending. Our warm-up session is ending. They're going to be gridding up here in just a moment. And unfortunately, if I'm seeing this correctly, the track temperature has gone right back up to 129 Fahrenheit. That is 54 degrees Celsius.
It's a bit toasty out there. I also see it's almost nearly 30 degrees ambient Celsius there, so it is a warm day in Southern California. After all, if you look at this place, Joe, it is on the other side of the mountains. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, exactly. With very little shade over it, no trees to speak of. As soon as that sun comes up, it is just going to heat everything up as it pounds down onto the pavement. You can see our drivers gridded up. Remember, I know it says 71 laps, but this first lap is going to be considered as their pace lap. So this is the formation lap for the drivers as they now take off and will be limited to, I believe it was a speed of around 100 kilometers an hour, I think 60 miles an hour.
Just try to warm up the cars, warm up the brains, get everything up to temperature, and they'll get them nice and filed up for the start, that rolling start like you were mentioning, and hopefully we'll have a nice clean race here for what is 70 laps around Riverside. I can't wait to see all of the cars hitting the track all together. We've been really watching them through practice and through qualifying. Each one of these drivers extracting the speed, but now it comes to race time. This is what everybody has been practicing for.
This is really an endurance race too. So this start, while they might try and get aggressive to get position, they have that fast sweeper, and we can see into these S's all the way from turn 2 up to turn 6. Essentially, it gets narrow and it's back and forth, Joey. I wonder if you really got to watch out for yourself and just try to get in line initially to avoid causing trouble.
And if you go back and watch historic video, Joe, trust me, they really straighten out those S's, sometimes not even following the track whatsoever. So, yeah, I think there's going to be a couple strategies, but we mentioned it earlier. I think strategy number 1, keep all 4 tires on the concrete.
Indeed, and make it to that finish for sure. As the drivers try and catch up here at the back of the field. Also need to mention that we have 2 classes that will be racing, the Pro and the Am. Mike Mallon on our pole for that Am category, starting 15th overall. But he's got a long ways down to the next one down, Nikolai Bavnek, who starts 21st overall. Did not qualify anywhere near that Ford Mustang up on the top spot.
Well, we're coming down the back straightaway right now, so we're going to see this entire field get grouped up. And Joe, this is the time that as a driver, you're taking deep breaths, right? You got to wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, get ready for what's about to come.
Okay, who's limbered up and ready for this one? Start of the season. Drivers might race with one another and be pretty familiar, but again, it's going to be a new dynamic here with a brand new series. Seeing the Genisus Extreme Trans Am Racing Challenge kick off today here at Riverside Raceway. Just one more corner to go for Brown to get things underway. What kind of start will we see for these classic muscle cars here at this classic California track, and who will still be running at the finish of our 2.5 hours roughly racing here into the famous banking of the final corner at Riverside Raceway, trying to get formed up nicely here for the start and into position. The 22 waiting patiently for the call from the flag stand. All the drivers stacked up now, eager to go on to the main straight. Looking for the call for that number 22 of Brown. He's holding them a long time. And he now gets on the throttle as we accelerate away into turn 1, down into the S's for the first time in anger. Still a little side by side for most of the field. Braun, though, is going to lead them into 2.
And this is that fast S section. We see 4th and 5th still kind of side by side, and now they get single file as we really weave in through 2, 3, and 4. For the most part, it looks like everybody has stayed on the track and into the hairpin for the first time.
This turn 6, so tricky. Look at the double apex through here, and there's no wiggle room around the outside with the wall right there, all the way around it. Coming down towards 7, a little bit of a kick up in the background there for one of our Plymouth Cudas, but thankfully keeps it pointed forward. Battle still going on for, I think that is that 5th place fight that you were watching.
And now we're on board with Jackson Robillard here in this number 98 Camaro. Giving chase right in front is Reese Gardner in that big old Plymouth Cuda. So this is the first lap, still trying to get everything up to temperature, and look at how much dust and dirt is being kicked up. All of these drivers using all of the racetrack, and even some putting the rubber down to the road, sliding it out of the corners.
And Jackson looked a little bit squirrely under braking for sure. Still trying to chase, and Jesper Pedersen here in that number 917 trying to catch up to Godrecki. This is the battle for 4th position as they head through the kink and down into the banking of turn 9. Not quite close enough this time. The fire bursts out of the sides of the cars. Whoa, very slideways and up into the wall, unfortunately shoving his competitor Kirsten. Couldn't keep it out of there.
And now we're going to get, I believe that's the 41 car of D. Great racecraft right there. Got 2 for 1 in that final corner because those 2 cars were scrapping it out. He said, thank you very much. I'm just going to slide right down to the inside.
Still getting those tires up to temperature a little bit, it seems like, as just didn't quite anticipate where that braking needed to be. The number 31 sitting in 15th right now. Birchfield currently chasing Dolan for that 14th position. Our AM leader still currently Mike Mallon, but he's down to 19th overall. All that matters, though, is his position in class.
I think what I'm really curious about, because this is a very, very long race, and I'm seeing a lot of these drivers be pretty aggressive out here. How long are these tires going to hang on? How much can you abuse them early on? And when do they start to fall off? Because I see a ton of yaw angle from quite a few of these cars.
Yeah, same here. Siemenchich seeing whether or not he can make a pass, but no dice. Pedersen once again in a little bit of a battle. Cuts back underneath of Godrecki, but he's going to get the door shut in his face.
Ooh, this is some close racing up here. And really, the top 5, they've kind of gapped themselves out just a little bit. Braun is really the early pace setter, so I feel like if you're Pedersen right here, you feel like you're being held up. I understand kind of putting the nose down in there, trying to force a move, seeing if you can set an early pace.
Whipping past our camera here at the kink. We're going to check back a little bit farther. The battle for 14th once again. Birchfield, I think he may have taken that one because I think he was in 15th before.
I love these shots of just these big old V8s flying by these cameras and into that big old banked turn number 9. Roll it out onto the front straightaway and flirt with that wall on driver's left. Cross start finish. Do it all over again. It looks like Reese Gardner here in the number 94. He's moving up a spot.
Yep, gets by Kirsten, who we saw have some issues a little bit early. We don't know if there's any damage on that Mustang at this stage. Just behind him, I think that's one of our Javelins and a classic paint on that machine coming up behind. So that's going to be Robillard in that one, coming off of turn 6 and down the hill towards 7. He's close, but I think he needs to be just a hair closer to do anything into this hairpin.
What I think is so fun watching these cars, Joe, is when they turn in, right? They turn the car in, the front end bites, and then just kind of the rear end does what it wants to. It just kind of floats around back there. The driver has to deal with it, and when you got over 400 horsepower, it can be rather fun to drive a car like that.
Well, and we got to remember, we can kind of see here too, back in the day, they didn't have the perfect billiard smooth racetracks. The suspension on these cars were very, very soft, and you can see how much they lean and roll into these turns.
There was a lot of compliance built into it back then, and the cars were big, right? They were heavy. They needed to be compliant out there. If you spring them stiff like a go-kart, it's just going to skate around on all these old surfaces. So it's just the whole vintage package here between the cars, the tire, and the track.
Ooh, 3 wide coming down into the kink. Some brave drivers in here fighting for, I think, 14 spots still in amongst them. They're all going to fan out across the banking coming through turn 9. John Kenny in amongst them, behind Birchfield, behind Genisus, up there ahead of them as well. So as they cross the line once again, the 124 still keeping the pressure on, flying through turn 1. Could we still see some side-by-side behind them? I think DeVos and Salmon haven't sorted it out for 16th.
Just right on the tire tracks here through this S section. Watching John Kenny here in this number 25 just apply all sorts of pressure here. He's trying to get around this number 25. I'm sorry, that's the 124 trying to get around the 25. And you just sometimes have to follow as close as you can in the mirror, try to force that mistake out of the driver and then take advantage.
Yeah, you're right. That is DeVos fighting with Kenny for what is that 15th place. So apologies, but they're going to have it to sort that one out sooner rather than later. They keep fighting like this. They got a long race to go. They're going to lose touch with those ahead of them. But it looks like this lead has definitely not changed much. Braun is still barely ahead by about half a second over Kantonen between the two of them. And Simoncic has been just filling the mirrors of that 72.
And where I'm going to put on my hat now is the strategy hat. Remember, we got 70 laps that we're going to do around this place, and I'm looking at our fast lap versus the last lap. It's only differed by about 1/10 of a second. So these cars, they don't have too much fall off right now. While that might not be how the cars are being driven, they might be able to be driven differently just with the temperatures, but in terms of that fall off, it's pretty consistent.
Yeah, it's still well up there at about 52 Celsius. I think a little bit of a slide there from the 77. It's going to try and hold on to it. Starasovs is still struggling with a 62 to his outside and behind him. Unfortunately, someone has just slammed the wall. I think that's Hermans.
Yeah, I believe so in that red Firebird. That was some heavy contact with the driver's left side of the wall, and this is actually up here for the lead. So all of a sudden, Braun has company. This is headed down into turn number 7. He's on the left side of the racetrack, which is exactly where you want to be. But here comes an over-under and a little bit of a door bang while we're at it.
Kantonen's going to muscle his way through. Simoncic says, now's my shot. Now's my chance to try and capitalize on this. Can he manage to overtake the 22 the long way around at turn 8? That's going to be tough, especially since he's got Godrecki in behind him. And indeed, he's going to try and stay patient. Oh, fighting back for the lead. David is going to try and get side by side, make it a drag race down the drag strip. No, he doesn't get the exit he needs.
It was just over, under, and now it is officially Kantonen out front, but I don't think that Braun is going to accept that pass going down the back straightaway here. He is in position if he wants to slide out to driver's right to try to outbrake into turn 9. He can, and there he goes. How much speed does he carry in?
Devin going to try to take this lead right back from him. They stay side by side. Meanwhile, behind them, Godrecki also struggling to keep up with Simoncic. He tried to attack on him. Into the wall goes Kantonen. Again, that outside exit of the final turn looks to be a very dangerous spot to push the limits.
And now Braun's going to have the racing line, huck it into turn number 2, and you see him jump that apex curb. That's how big and heavy these cars are, taking advantage of every single piece of racetrack, plus some.
Back and forth they weave as they snake up the hill and into turn 6. Got to give Devin some credit. He is not going to take this one sitting down. He's forcing him to really try and get by and hold it hard. But Kantonen has not dropped off, even despite the contact with the outside wall he had out of the final turn. We saw this last time. The 22 went a little wide. This time looks a lot more controlled, though, and he doesn't slip out too far to allow the 72 through.
It doesn't look like Kantonen has any damage on that car. It seems like the pace is still right there. So it's a top 5 breakaway. Braun, Kantonen, Simoncic, Godrecki, and Peterson. Those are your top 5 group. And then we got to go back about 4 seconds to Reese Gardner back there in that Plymouth Cuda in 6th place. But I can tell you that Reese is laying down some lap times. He's slowly catching this group.
All right, Now at about 3.5 seconds back. He's got some work to do, but we're still a long ways to go. We're only on lap 7 out of this race. I guess we're technically on lap 6 of the race, since lap 1 was the pace lap. But coming down into that banked final corner once again. This time it's not going to be side by side for any of them. They'll stay single file throughout onto the main straight. Does look like Jesper is starting to pile on the pressure. Godrecki is holding him back for now, but he is just making sure that that number 105 has to stay very diligent right now.
And that is a Firebird versus Camaro battle here. So Peterson in this white, black, and red Firebird, applying that pressure to that green Camaro right in front of them. And I mean, they're all chasing the front three here. I think that all 3 or all 5 of those cars have plenty of pace. So it's really just going to be, where can you take advantage? Where are you just maybe a little bit faster than your competitors? We check back in here. This is Jackson Robillard here in the number 98. Applying all sorts of pressure to Kirsten right in front of him.
Just about managed to get beside Nicholas, but had to duck out of it up through the S's, or else we were going to have a massive accident. So thankfully they carry on. And this is for the 8th position between the pair of them. So this is still up in the higher regions of the field. Also, did we have it? Yeah, we had a change for the lead in the AM while we weren't watching. Looks like Igor Polikov is now up at the front, at 20th overall currently.
You know, we didn't talk about that too much, that we do have the Pro and the AM class out here. So you're right, Igor back there in the 20th spot overall is our AM leader, as this is Mike Mallon, who's currently running 23rd in his Ford Mustang Boss 302. He is also part of this AM class.
Yeah, he was the leader at the start of the race and led at least a lap or 2 up at the front from what we saw, but at some point he's been overtaken, and now Igor is trying to run away, although not very far, because he's got less than a second between himself and Steph Hermans, who we saw hit the wall, and it looks like we got another car in the wall. That may have been Celadon back there.
I think it's just going to be managing those brakes, managing those temperatures, managing that entry speed, because if you get pulled along in the draft, your eyes get so big in the brake zone and it's so easy to overshoot it. And here comes a potential move into turn number 2, but going into that section of the racetrack, there's just not a whole lot of area that you can make a really big lunge. You can present the car, but oftentimes that door is going to be shut real fast.
Exactly. So you really have to make a judgment call and some of these corners, make sure that you can still get to the finish of the race. Like we said, preserve the car, get to that checkered flag. That's job 1 here today. Liam Dolan, in the meantime, just behind Igor. Well, it was Hermans behind him. And now this is one of the Pro drivers. So this isn't actually that bad for Igor to have that buffer between himself and his rival in class.
Yeah, it's kind of nice to have that, and if you can, take advantage. Start to run away from it. You know you aren't battling him in terms of the overall position, so you do need to focus a little bit on the car behind, but focus forward, hit your marks, and see if you can run away from those other AM cars.
Boy, Hermans was way off the line there and was struggling to keep the car pointed straight. So that meant that Bavenbeck is now able to catch up and make a little bit of a threat. He's the one in the blue car, and I take that back because it seems that Hermans, unfortunately for our Pro driver, has gotten back up on the horse and is trying to see if he can get himself that position. Looks like he's got a replay.
Yeah, I believe this is Fleur down here. Oh, that was up in, I believe, the exit of turn number 6 that one of the cars was having the issue. And then does Fleur also have an issue here into turn 7? And the number 52 just got in too deep. But hey, you know what? Nice job avoiding the other cars. And then the rejoin a little bit too hot onto the track. And oh, there's another impact. Bummer.
Yeah, that was a bad place to be. I'm sure he wanted to get it out of the way, but he had to wait for a good clearing before he could get going. It just wasn't enough. Braun, now that he's back up in the lead, is starting to separate himself. 1.5 seconds between himself and Kantonen. Ascari's going to have to try and pick up the pace to keep hold of him, especially considering Simoncic is becoming more and more of a threat.
Something we haven't even talked about yet. I see all the cars on the racetrack. We're going to have to deal with lap traffic later in this race. So these drivers, they might be happy and in clean air now, but the decisions for sure are going to have to come later. And another observation that I was making, Joe, some of these cars, they're glowing the brakes quite a bit more than others. I wonder if that's going to come into play.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, if the temperatures are doing what that glowing implies, you kept talking about how heavy these cars are. Those brakes are not going to be happy by the end of 2.5 hours. Simoncic now, instead of being on attack for Kantonen, is watching Godrecki behind him. Doesn't look like Franek is going to be able to get close enough to threaten coming out of the final corner, at least at this time. So he'll back off, try and regroup, see if he can do something a little bit later on. We're up to lap 10, lap 11, depending on how you want to count it. So when will we start to see pit stops and some more swapping of positions down here, as I think that was the 71 getting a spot. It's Hillebrand.
That's Hillebrand giving chase right there to Nicholas Kirsten in that cream and red colored Boss 302R here. So that is an old vintage livery coupled with kind of one of those Sunoco Camaro liveries right behind in Hillebrand. So nice kind of 4-car battle. I believe it's Tom D, Jackson Robillard, Nicholas Kirsten, and Nicholas Hillebrand right here in this Chevy Camaro, rounding through turn number 7 and slowly but surely wagging the tail a little bit more and a little bit more. But I don't see any drastic fall off when it comes to the lap times. All the cars are staying relatively consistent. It really is just up to the driver and limiting those mistakes.
All right, so either they're saving their tires very well, or tire fall off not going to be a concern in this race. Hillebrand still working on that number 3. And you mentioned, yeah, the old Sunoco livery just evokes thoughts of Mark Donohue, of the old Penske cars way back when. Let's see what he can do with this Camaro on the Ford. What I mean, talk about an iconic rivalry, Chevy versus Ford.
You know, and I raced against the blue and yellow Camaros, granted the newer Riley technology versions, but they were definitely emulating this car right here. It was so successful in its heyday, not to mention like the drivers that you were just mentioning, extremely successful program and very iconic. You can show a picture of that blue and yellow number 6 to pretty much anybody and they know it's a Camaro.
Bit of a poor exit coming off the final turn from Nicholas here as we rode on board. You could see he had to try and save it from getting into the wall. That cost him some car lengths up ahead to that number 3, who now is able to focus forward at least for a little bit. Up into the braking of 6. Look at how blind it is. And we're on the roof, don't forget. So this is higher up than what the driver can see.
The track falls away right here, but coming up to 7, there's just this little bit of a crest right here in the brake zone and then also in turn-in. So it's a little bit of an odd situation trying to spot the marker as well as getting the car to kind of cooperate with everything that you're asking out of the front end, and then also putting the back end, the power down coming out of the exit. And then you got one more slow corner that seems to last forever here, turn number 8.
Yeah, it's that long entry. You can see it goes and it goes, and then it tightens right about here. And to top it off, it's got a little flick back to the left to lead you onto the main straight to kind of tighten up that exit too, give you less space to try and track out. So it's so important to be getting on the throttle as early as you can. Going back to Godrecki once again. Still has Pedersen in front of him. This has been quite the back and forth. Essentially, well, now a battle for third. I don't think, did we catch Simoncic going by Kantonen? Because I believe Ascari was in second for much of this race.
Correct. Yeah, Kantonen was in second, so Simoncic got around him somewhere. So now the order is Braun, Simoncic, Kantonen, your top 3. Then comes Pedersen, Godrecki, and then is the big gap to Reese Gardner. It's still about 3 seconds. I've been watching that gap, Joe. It's kind of fluctuated between 3 seconds, 6 seconds. It really just kind of depends on the laps they're putting down. But if you notice, Reese has separated himself from that other pack. He's trying his damnedest to come and collect these guys.
He wants to be up there so bad, but it's a long race. You talked about the strategy that could help him later on. We'll see whether or not he can get that Barracuda up and amongst the group. In fact, he's the highest of our Barracudas in this race right now, sitting in 6th place. You have to go all the way down to 12th for Matt Wright to find the next one.
Watching Polyakov here. Now, he is your AM leader in this Chevy Camaro, this number 07 white and green car. Heated up through the S's here. Up around turn number 6 one more time. And there's that brake glow that I was talking about. However, on this car, this number 7, I really only see it dialed out or dialed more in the front. It's not all 4 rotors that are glowing. It might be just this driver has a little bit more front brake bias cranked in.
That Mustang just a little bit smaller than some of these other cars, maybe a tiny bit lighter. Oh, as we're going to go side by side. And is this Godrecki finally getting through? It might be, but he goes way deep into turn 9, trying to keep it tucked in. Pedersen's going to fight him back, and he's going to emerge ahead, but here comes the cutback from Godrecki.
Oh, and a little bit of contact on corner exit, and now Godrecki is going to look down to the inside, but I've said it before, this S section, you just can't really make a move. The brake zone not very big. You see the flames spit out the side, and both of the drivers saying, I'm going to protect the inside, and it doesn't matter if it's the concrete or in the grass.
Robillard currently sitting in 8th position right now and chasing on Tom D. Behind him, that is Nicholas Kirsten, who we've seen in plenty of action. I'm going to keep half an eye on the time between Malin and Polyakov, because remember, he was a few cars back, and he's apparently passed them when we weren't looking. So has recovered to try and retake that AM lead. I wouldn't be too shocked if he's going to go through and manage to take that. In fact, I think he just took the fastest lap in the AM class that last time by.
Watching Robillard here currently chase down the number 41. That is Tom D directly in front of him. And this battle has been going on for quite some time, and a little bit too deep into the corner. Robillard's able to save it, but that's going to allow Hillebrand up the inside and out of turn number 8, do the over-under. It'll be a drag race down the back straightaway, but it looks like Hillebrand has been able to recover. I'm sorry, Kirsten is well in that.
Yeah, Kirsten in that 3 car was trying to pick his pocket, but he just could not manage to get by in time. Here is on board with Hillebrand, who saw everything through his windscreen. Actually, that slowed up the 3 enough that it looks like Nicholas spies an opportunity into the final turn. We've seen every which line through this more than 180-degree corner. He's going to try the inside and doesn't. Did he actually get that one? Yes, he did.
Well, Robillard up into 8th place. And then that means Hillebrand directly behind there in 9th as they go through this S section one more time. What's on the back? Oh, we got a car right in front, and that is the biggest accident we have seen, and that is going to collect several of the cars here in the top 10.
Including Godrecki, unfortunately, who was really in a big fight. Is that Pedersen as well, potentially, I think, involved in it? Not sure who this yellow and green machine is, but they've also got the other yellow and green machine of Reese Gardner now having caught up in the 94.
Now, I don't know what that's going to do in terms of the damage model, how much it's going to affect their lap time, but that is exactly what those drivers didn't want to see. It is such a funnel section through the S's, and we saw the car off there, and I think it just gives a great opportunity to that green and gold number 94. Joe, you were mentioning him. Reese Gardner has now used that. He's caught back up.
So this is kind of what he needed. Unfortunately, it doesn't catch all of them. Just these couple that kind of ran into the incident. Godrecki and Pedersen falling backwards by about 2 seconds from the leaders. There you can see the gaps between themselves and the cars ahead. Cantonen using this as best he can to try and scamper away, while Reese Gardner, the man from down under, is not quite going to be able to get there. Oh, cut back from them and a cut across as Godrecki is in no mood to give any sway to Jesper Peterson, who has to back out of it.
And Joe, I think that this is going to be a little bit of an interesting dynamic for this battle, because Godrecki and Peterson, they've been fighting this whole race, but Reese, he hasn't been there. He has crawled him in, just made up that time, so he knows that he's fast, but this is a new player entering the arena, and he's got to kind of watch out for what these two are doing. They probably aren't even looking in the mirror at him.
So I think that may have been Bruno Chicane who caused that incident initially. We don't have complete confirmation, but that's what we believe that may have been. We'll see if he has to come into the pits, because that was a pretty big hit. Oh, Godrecki is going to go way too wide. Frantic can't hold on to it. He tries to cut back across. He does get some speed with it. Pedersen to the inside. That's going to be a little bit easier to defend coming down into 8, I would think.
I've been noticing these cars are very good at the over-under, and look at Godrecki, look at how deep he takes it. No way he stays on the racetrack, and now Reese Gardner is collected as well as Godrecki was coming back on the racetrack. I tell you what was a clean early 10 to 15 laps has all of a sudden gotten a little messy here in the last few.
Drivers starting to turn it up a little bit. They're losing their patience. Reese having to wait for the opening to get the car turned around. Oh, and the 124 is going to join him in sympathy, unfortunately. So, oh, and Reese is taking a tow. There must have been too much damage from that contact that he had with his rival. That was such a shame. I'm sure he saw that happening, Joey, and just thought, now I can finally do it. I can finally do it. And the car swung back in front.
Well, then, drawing back on it, I think that Reese was on the racing line, and yeah, that car just came back onto the racing surface, and Reese was already there. It just is definitely a bummer, considering that he was probably one of the fastest cars up towards the front, and he had made up a ton of time already.
So the 3 here of Kirsten now in 10th position. Just sitting behind Andrews and Hillebrand. Hasn't seemed to have had the best of pace so far in this race, because we've seen Nicholas just kind of lose a few spots here and there as the rear wants to kick out from under him up over turn 6. So he'll continue to follow behind the 2 Camaros in front of him, running line astern in the 7th and 8th spot, or excuse me, 8th and 9th spots.
We check back in here to the 18th place overall. This is the battle for the AM class lead. This is the number 66, currently chasing down Mike Mallon there in that white and black. I think that's a Ford Mustang Boss 302. So this is a little bit further back in the field, but you see it's a nice clean piece of racetrack. They can race it out themselves, all for this AM class lead.
Sounds like we got a replay spooled up here. Let's see what we're going to be watching. Chris Okuda in his Javelin. So it was, looks like Chris Okuda actually that caused the incident. And I can't, I mean, I don't want to say you can't blame him, but it just kind of, the wall looks like it bounced him right into the racing line. So it wasn't a case of he parked it there. It's just where he wound up.
I agree. He was trying to stop the car, and unfortunately where it finally came to a stop was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and yeah, a big wreck kind of occurred. And I believe, is this our first pit stop of the day? This is Nicholas Kirsten. Remember, this is one of the cars that was kind of right there inside the top 10.
Indeed, looked like taking tires from what I could tell on the screen, as the right side of the car did go up. Takes them a while. Sadly, it seems one of our first DNFs today is going to be Reese Gardner. No, it looks like Okuda also was out before him. Steph Hermans and Mario Mariano also out of this race early. Nicholas Hillebrand behind Andrews. Is this teamwork between them? Oh, and internet doing internet things there briefly. I thought he was going to slide wide for a second.
He had you fooled there, Joe. That's what that was. But Robillard, so this is the battle for what is 6th place. So Jackson Robillard in that multicolored machine applying the pressure to the number 41. That's Tom D right in front of him. They are both Camaros and just kind of showing off the muscle down the back straightaway. And this is kind of the moment that I was waiting for. We're starting to get more and more traffic throughout the racetrack now. So it's not just the drivers battling for position, but they also have to deal with everybody else out there and navigating through sometimes these slower cars.
Indeed. It'll just be a conveyor belt at some point of cars around the track with really no leeway in terms of dealing with the traffic, no relief out there. But the Chevy Camaros stay up in front as Robillard is not going to allow or is not able to quite catch them. Meanwhile, Darren Andrews in behind them. In fact, I think, is this 4 Chevys in a row? Yeah. Looks like we have quite a few of them in this part of the field, all the way from 5th down to 9th position. That is all Camaros.
Check back in on Darren Andrews here running in the 8th place. We have a string of Camaros. We were talking about it early pre-race, Joe. The Camaro, I think, is the most popular car out here. I think I saw 15 of them on the entry list. So not too surprising to kind of see strings of them together for sure.
Indeed. And coming down now into turn 7. Quite a drop off through here. Got to manage the car as it wants to slide out, cut back. Looks like a lot of drivers trying to diamond that corner to really get the speed off of it to keep themselves from being vulnerable here into turn 8. But no such threat on Darren Andrews in that number 9. Although, my goodness, look at him three-wheel it coming through turn 8.
The yaw angle is getting more and more aggressive as we're getting some door banging a little bit further back in the pack, about 16th-ish or so. I believe this is Nicholas Kirsten and Mantis Iskanitis here, as well as your AM class that's kind of coming up behind. And is that the City Chevrolet that I'm noticing as well?
It is indeed the 46 in the mix, and it looks like Iskanitis is going to be able to rebuff him at least for now. So not going to quite be able to get in there. And as the 66 and the 29, Mike Mallon versus our friend Bavenbeck, as the Bavenbeck is going to get very slideways coming through turn 8, but so is Mallon, and that will really scupper his hopes to try and attack down the backstretch. Look how far back he is now.
Yeah, but even though he lost a little bit of track position, I think that this battle is still on. You know, up front, it's a little over a second between the two pros, and this AM battle quite a bit closer. So I'm loving seeing it between Bavenbeck and Mallon. They've swapped positions quite a few times already this race, too.
I think that 46 is a lap down car, if I'm seeing correctly, because I don't think Iskanitis is close to being scored at the same lap as that car. Got a nice three-way battle with the 41, seeing whether or not he can do something with those ahead. Godrecki with Robillard in behind. Uh-oh, he left the door open. Robillard now says, here's my chance. He's going to get inside of him as the 77 off course next to them. They're going to bang doors as they fly off of turn 8 onto the backstretch.
It's just such a long corner. Taking the outside around, it's oftentimes not going to prevail in terms of a pass, and we saw it right there. So Tom D in the side, this number 41, definitely got the elbows out, but I don't think it's over. Check out Darren Andrews. He is sucking up right on that back straightaway. Does he slide out drivers right to make a move here into turn number 9? Looks like he's going to hold station for now as they both kind of back it into the corner.
Oh, maybe a little too much there for Robillard. He's going to fall way wide. No, excuse me, that's not Robillard. That is that was Andrews. Yeah, Tom D going to be able to get by.
Yeah, it was definitely just kind of swapping those positions around that Tom D lost out going into turn number 9 there. So move Andrews up into the 7th spot. And this is actually quite a big battle because right in front of him, you were just mentioning Robillard's right on the back of Godrecki, and if they slow down at all, and there's a spin right in front of him at the end of the S's.
Beautiful avoidance from Robillard. Somehow snuck through between the apex and a spinning car, and now he's going to have to overtake lap traffic on top of things. Boy, you were right when you said that things suddenly went from a nice, calm, and very gentlemanly start, and things have just been bonkers the last 5 or 6 laps.
Well, and Joe, we didn't say the name of that green car spinning. That was Godrecki. Remember, he was part of that front 5 group this entire time. Just a self-mistake, and now he falls all the way back. I'm looking, he's now in 10th.
Crucial mistake. Car must have just got out from underneath him coming up through the S's, and that will have cost him, unfortunately. Looks like we still only have 6 cars out of this race since Reese Gardner. We've lost Liam Dolan and Robin DeVos also out.
I have a feeling those won't be the only 6 by the time we're done with the 70 laps out here, but it's been a pretty good attrition rate. I wouldn't say that the cars are dropping out left and right. We've had plenty of accidents, so I'm not surprised to see a few of them out there, but we still have a lot of racing going on, including this battle for what is arguing over 5th place.
Absolutely. It's been a great one. Robillard, I got to say, he's impressed me. He's brought that 98 up position after position. Oh, and we're thinking about side by side into the S's once again between Andrews and D, but D doesn't quite get the chance that he needs at this stage. He splits between the Camaros with what actually almost has looked like teammates between the pair of them. They'll all try and get the car woed up now into turn 6. Again, covering the inside. Andrew gets a hello. He'll have to cut across the course. He's on the wrong side of the barrier, and he absolutely spears into the edge of it.
Oh, can he back up? Yes, he is going to get back onto the racetrack. It doesn't look like there's any more damage with the wall, but that was just some front to rear contact in one of the slower areas, and now he falls all the way back to what is 10th place. And oh, that was another problem right there in front of him. And I believe that was the paint of some of the front-running cars.
Yeah, Andrews, it looks like, involved in that, goes backwards. And is that Bo Pedersen? Oh, my goodness, and he's not moving. This might be his race over.
See if he can get this thing refired or exactly what the problem was, but that looks to be another DNF. Pedersen, one of the cars that was running up front all race long, a turn of misfortune.
Oh, no. So, well, that does mean that I believe Godrecki gets at least 2 positions out of that. So there's some of the work done. Let's see if he can pass about 5 more to get close to where he was. Holy cow, driver sliding through the banking of turn 9, somehow holding on to it. But it looks like, is that D managing to finally get by?
I think that was Tom D getting around Hillebrand right there. So he now moves up into the 5th place, giving chase to Jackson Robillard. That's that multicolored Camaro directly in front of him. But this pack of 3 has been fighting now for what seems like 20 laps.
Yeah, and I had forgotten with the similarly liveried cars, it was Andrews that he was fighting with, and Hillebrand must have snuck by at some point. I think it sounds like we might have a replay of perhaps one of those incidents that we had missed. I wonder if this is Pedersen. Yes, indeed it is. So this is into turn 6. He was stopped just into 7. Now, how did he manage this, though?
There's a couple of cars directly in front of him. I wonder if somebody has maybe spun him.
Oh, yeah.
There it is, the 27 just sitting perpendicular on the racetrack. And remember when we were riding on board, there's a little bit of an elevation over crest there, very difficult to see.
Trying to find who that 27 is. That Filippo Marazzi, I think, is that who we've got in that car. But yeah, so just the wrong place at the wrong time. Not the first time we've seen that today, unfortunately. Ooh, down the back stretch. And once again, Robillard rather, is in the thick of the action with cars on either side of him heading into the banking. The 41 and the 71 going to take the shorter line, but will the outside provide the momentum onto the main straight?
We've seen so many cars smack the wall coming out of turn number 9. I think Robillard might have got a piece of it, but the cars seem pretty sturdy. As long as you really don't stall them out, they can get back to pit lane, fix up any of that damage. So this 3-pack of Camaros continues to fight, and that orange Plymouth Barracuda has been hunting them down. That is Matt Wright in the number 49. So we saw Reese Gardner in that other Cuda hunt down a pack earlier, and now the orange one of Matt Wright doing the same to this pack of Camaros.
If that's the Matt Wright I'm thinking of, I have to check his bio here. That could be the same one that I've called in the Lotus 49s for many a year. Not a surprise at all to see him in another vintage series now and doing an excellent job out there to work himself up into 7th.
And to kind of put it in perspective, Matt was doing a 150.8 that last time by, and Robillard, Hillebrand, they all were doing 51.2s, 51.3s. So that orange Cuda definitely on the move as we check back in. This is our leader, Devin Braun. Nothing's really changed. I think that Simonchich is doing a very good job. He's only about 1.4 seconds back. Not necessarily filling the mirrors, but keeping our leader honest.
Just double checked, and that is indeed the same Matt Wright that I was thinking of. So a big hello to Matt. Glad to see him back in one of our races. So we watch our leader come out and now get ready to start lap 25 of this race. So more than a third of the way through the event. We're still yet to see him take a pit stop, though. We'll see, I think Kirsten, the only one I see that has been in and out other than Darren Andrews and Chris Gordon. And Dean Hillebrand will not quit fighting out there.
Just wagging the tail coming out of all of these corners, picking up the inside front, going through turn 1. It is so cool to watch these cars just kind of bounce around this Riverside racetrack. And yeah, Hillebrand now finds himself finally in front of D. I wonder if he's going to be able to stretch it out. If I've seen anything from the last handful of laps, Tom D, he came to fight and to race.
Certainly going to make the 41 work for, or certainly going to make the 71 work for that position up in front of him. Looks like some more lap traffic just there, but they've also got Matt Wright getting ever closer. I think the last couple laps he's just been cutting off a 10th here and a 10th there as we had a driver in pit lane. Was that Birchfield?
I believe it was Salmonen.
Okay, so I see Deaton Brush has been in as well into pit lane. Starzov also has been in. Also, for what it's worth, I believe Bavenbeck is still our leader in the AM category right now, and looks like it's a pretty healthy margin. Yeah, it's about 12 or so seconds.
Been keeping my eye on pit lane, and of the cars that are still running, about a third of them have come down pit lane. Our leader has not, and Joe, like you were mentioning, it was Nicholas Kirsten is the, oh, well, I speak of the devil, here is our leader, Devin Braun, in pit lane, so he made it 25 laps on that tank of fuel. Interesting,
okay. So maybe one more stop for him to try and finish this one up. Kantonen also pitting in. Braun just trying to finish his up. D also pitting in. Remember, there is no speed limit here. You just have to be safe. And some of them are just licking the stamp and sending it.
Well, thankfully, we don't have any virtual pit crew members standing out there with the signboards, because I have a feeling it would kind of look like a beach ball flying through the air with some of these guys hauling into pit road. But hey, that's what it used to be like, right? I mean, there was no pit lane speed limit, so that's exactly what we're seeing here on the racetrack.
Well, I'm curious if they've also enforced, I haven't seen anything in the rules, is maybe make it really like the 1970s, that there's no live data that they can go for, that you just have to kind of go based on what the car feels like and whatever your pit crew feeds you through that board out on the pit lane. Devin Braun has taken his pit stop. He'll return in fourth place. We believe he will need at least one more. Another car off to the side of the track, though.
Yeah, unless he is able to stretch it way further than his first stint. Yeah, the easiest way to think of it, this will be a two-stop race for Braun. He made it 25 laps on the first. I would expect him to make it to about lap 50 or so and pit for the second time and then be good to go to the end.
Sounds like we've had another DNF for John Kenny, who's blown his engine. Yeah, he is out of it. Filippo Marazzi also out of this race. Jared Ryan is back 4 laps down and trying to get into the hunt here. So he's repaired the car for whatever issues plagued him and returned. Coming back to Kirsten now, who is up to 7th place. Nicholas, I believe, yeah, already took his stop a long time ago, so he's going to start cycling back through.
He has caught up to Tom D in that number 41 Chevy Camaro, and from what I see, Tom has not come down pit road yet, so we're going to see if this white and blue Camaro right in front makes the right turn onto pit road or if he stays on the racetrack. Looks like he's going to stay on the racetrack, so I really do wonder how far can these cars stretch it on fuel. Or are these lead drivers coming in based off of just, hey, this is where the tire wear is, this is how many stops I want to make in the race?
So looks like I think we've got a couple more that pitted in. Hillebrand has now pitted. D is going to be the last one amongst the leaders. Matt Wright, although, also needs to take a stop. And I know it says that's 3 minutes in for Braun, but I'm pretty sure he's back out on the track unless we're missing something, as we got a replay now. So this is Marazzi.
Yeah, this is up in that turn 6 section. Fall off the racetrack here, and I believe what we're going to have is a big old kablooey from the V8, Joe.
Listening in. And it doesn't want to go. Yeah, there it is. Nothing left of it. It pulls over to the side, parks it safely, thankfully, and that's it for Filippo Marazzi. We know he had a pretty big hit, so I wouldn't be surprised if that damaged the engine and it just could not take the stresses. Back to Hillebrand, just behind Kirsten as well. Now trying to see whether or not he can get this position away from half a second, separating the pair of them as they fly down the back stretch, with getting close to the halfway point of this race. Just a couple more laps and we will hit the 50% mark.
Getting a little bit close to the bumper on that number 42 car as Hillebrand doesn't want to get held up at all from the slower traffic, because he has, I believe that is Robillard, now looking to the inside in turn number 1, and that is a sketchy place to try to make a pass. You see Jackson kind of tuck back in a line, look for another opportunity to come, probably through some of these hairpins a little bit later.
And coming up to the difficult braking here where it weaves back and forth coming into there. Robillard's going to stick his nose round the outside. It doesn't look like that's going to work out. The 18 jumps out of the way of the pair of them. There's a wiggle, though, coming off of Hillebrand, coming off of turn 6. Looks like he's going to once again threaten him. Looking at the outside, down into 7 now. Cuts back underneath him. Can he get the overlap? Oh, it's not there.
I was going to say that was nicely played by Hillebrand. I feel like Robillard is definitely, call it the aggressor in this battle. He was trying to use that lapped car, was looking to the inside, but Hillebrand left plenty of racing room for a car to the inside, and he's just doing a good job hitting his marks right now, but you can clearly see that multicolored number 98 definitely wants by.
He's been keeping him busy. Question is, can he actually execute the pass here? Does seem like it's possible, but we've seen oftentimes that you kind of have to wait for a mistake from your rival if you're close on pace with them, or just see if you could juke them maybe this will be it, as they'll go wheel to wheel through the kink and into 9. Round the outside could do it if he holds tight here. Going the long way, but using that extra momentum from there. He'll cut underneath on Hillebrand. Hillebrand gets on the throttle much better, and he will stay ahead.
You gotta wonder how much faster Robillard is if he was able to get by this other Camaro out here. You just kind of get the sense that he's being held up a ton. However, passing and catching cars are two totally different things, and Hillebrand, I mentioned it, he's just doing an excellent job hitting his marks, right? He's not overdriving the car. He's putting it right on the racing line, not skating out wide anywhere, and there's Robillard taking a look to the inside. You can always do that there at the top of turn 6, but it oftentimes costs you just a touch on the exit.
So isn't there yet. Oh, I thought he was going to try and stick his nose in down through 7 again, but thankfully I think that may have been just him turning in slightly earlier than his rival. As we check back in with what is one point was our AM leader, but this is second now in that class. If I'm seeing this right, it's about 4 seconds between the Bavenbeck car and between Mike Mallon, who is back up to the top spot in that 29 Mustang.
Well, and tell me if I'm reading this here right, but Bavenbeck has yet to stop while Mallon has already made his first stop.
Right.
So I wonder if there's some strategy play going on between the two of them, because I'm looking at the lap count, Joe. If you can make it another 5 laps, this will be a one-stop race.
Exactly, and that could work out quite well. That said, if Mallon has been caught by Bavenbeck here, then he might find himself caught once again. Or, excuse me, no, he's caught Bavenbeck and passed him. Bavenbeck would probably find himself caught and passed once again by the end of this race. It all depends on how far apart they were last time. But it does seem like it's going to be marginal between the pair of them. As we check out Braun, who's back up to the top spot. Simoncic is about a second behind him currently, but Kantonen, since the pit stops, lost out majorly in comparison.
You're right, Kantonen definitely kind of fell off the wagon there, but Simoncic, he has actually closed it in the last, call it, dozen laps or so. It was about 1.5 seconds before the pit stop, so that driver of the number 17, like I said, keeping them honest there, and this is still that battle between, I believe, Hillebrand and Robillard. This is now approaching turn number 8 on the racetrack, and Robillard still just looking for this way around the blue and yellow Camaro. Hillebrand just doing everything right so far.
Jackson cannot find a way through, unfortunately. Camaro versus Camaro, so no difference in the make of the car to give him that sort of advantage. He knows all the tricks that Hillebrand does and has to just try and outthink him around the track, use what little extra speed he has, try and get through. Is that lap traffic in front of them, though? I think it is, so wonder if that could be the opportunity that Jackson's waiting for.
And we've seen the lap traffic kind of get in the way a few different ways out here, whether it be a wreck or just kind of a car being in the way. It looks like this car, the number 7, is going to let these two leaders by, so not interfere with their battle at all. Jackson Robillard still looking for the way around Hillebrand right in front of him. And I said it a few laps ago, I feel like if Robillard can get by, I think he's just going to take off. Oh, look at the run that he had through the S's.
So fast that time through there, but still, if you're fast in the S's, where are you going to go to try and take advantage of it? This car is still sliding all over. It's starting to feel some of the frustration coming out of that car as the 98 just is plugged up behind this navy blue and gold Camaro. He's gonna have to try and think outside the box a bit here.
You're right. He's been trying kind of the same thing every single lap, and if it's not working, you need to try something new. And this is a little bit further back in the pack. This is the battle for what is 27th place. This is Fleur. He also is right on the back of Jonathan D in that number 42 car.
Absolutely. So Fleur kind of sizing him up. Not sure if there's a relation between Tom and Jonathan D out there, but Jonathan certainly having a contrasting fortune compared to the other D up at the front of the field, well back here in the back. And have we, no, it looks like they're still with him. We got a replay. Let's take a look and see what we're going to be watching this time. Caledon in the number 4.
This is through the S section here, and we oftentimes see drivers get behind the track. Got to get on the brakes through here and then up into turn number 6, and I believe the internet was playing a little bit of havoc there with Caledon.
Oh, man. So that's going to be a DNF for him. They don't want drivers to wind up having all kinds of bad connections and causing accidents in that sense. So that's why he has parked at Fleur. Is this Gerard Ryan as well? I don't think so. Is that this?
I believe that's the 72 out there. That's Cantonin. So that is actually the third place car that is coming up on some of the cars that are a little bit further back in the pack, including that big old 52 Dodge Challenger.
So maybe this could give a chance to Fleur. Once that car of Cantonin laps his rival, he could try and see if he can jump D just when he's not paying attention, trying to allow the leader on through. Siemanchich, ooh, he has caught up. It was a second and a half before. It is down to half a second now. And suddenly that Firebird is showing up in the mirrors of the Camaro.
This isn't the first kind of battle that Braun has had to face. Remember, he was side by side earlier in the race, but it has been a long time since he's had to fend off another competitor, and Siemanchich certainly seems like he has got the wick cranked up right now. He is on the attack.
But can he pass is the question. We've seen other drivers be stuck stationary in their order for a number of laps, even when there is a pace advantage. And it took Yernay a while to get where he is. So while he might be faster, how much faster? Is that going to be enough?
You know I'm a sucker for the data, Joe. The last lap from Siemanchich, a 148.17. His fastest lap of the race, a 148.14. So if you're looking for a driver that is putting it all on the line, it is Siemanchich right now.
Okay, so the 17 is there. Now he's got to make the overtake. They'll come out on the back stretch. This is a long, long straightaway here. This one, it goes on for quite some time as they pick up speed. So you will feel that slipstream of the car ahead by the time you get to this kink. But it doesn't look like it's got him there unless we see another move down to the inside of turn 9. And no, behind the timing tower, looks like he's going to stay line astern with him.
I think that this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg for this battle right now. You see Braun really a little bit wider coming out of turn number 9 there. Siemanchich just seems to be a little bit more tidy through this section of the racetrack right here. That usually means that the car has come to him, and I'm looking, he is still laying down some fast laps. Another 0.2 taken out of Braun that lap.
Ooh, whoa, a lot of the grass on the right-hand side and even more of the dirt there from Siemanchich as they push the limits of the track. He just about manages to get to the inside on the exit of turn 6 and unfortunately is not going to get through this time. Now, it looks like Devin is going to have to think twice about when he leaves that door open.
Looking to float the front tire as this is just all mechanical grip through these hairpin sections, and I really feel like it's just a matter of time before this 17 gets by the 22, and not that Braun is doing anything wrong. It's just that this Firebird right now, it seems to all of a sudden have picked up the pace, and maybe not down the straightaway as much as the Camaro, but through the twisty bits, it is all over him.
So as the drivers come back down the backstretch again, remember, different makes of cars, Camaro versus Pontiac. So we could see different strengths. Maybe this Pontiac is a little bit stronger late in the race, starts to really show its grunt. If it takes better care of the tires, if it finds itself doing good on lighter fuel, maybe that's starting to come into play. Also interesting to note that we lost Liam Dolan because of his actual brakes, his brake pedals and his sim rig acting up. He tried to fix them a little bit, but he decided it's better to be safe and park the car.
Always have different failures out there, whether it's from crashing the car, whether it's sim-related failures. You always see something new, it seems like, when you do one of these sim races. And there was the first mistake that I saw out of Simonchek. Really just wide through one of those S's right there. Lost just a little bit of track position as we jump back. This is Godrecki, and remember, Godrecki was running inside the top 5. Now he finds himself buried mid-pack.
Yeah, and I mean, he's had some bad luck. He's made some mistakes out there. Oh, I was going to say, don't try and stick it up the inside through turn 5, because I don't think that's going to work out well. So he'll have to sit patient behind the 7 for just a little bit longer, although the 7 moves off to the side. Thought he was going to let him through. Godrecki's going to get his nose down in through turn 7. Can't get the overlap through the corner as the pair of them navigate down the hill, and he gets chopped off once again.
Gonna have to look for a new opportunity, a new way around, and the number 7 did a really good job of just kind of late apexing that corner, so was kind of slow going in, left the door open, but then capitalized on the exit. And here, I think the 105 of Godrecki is going to try to do that coming out of turn 8. Really lay down the power down this big, long straightaway. See if he can get close enough to make a move here into the final corner.
Worth noting that that's Polyakov, who is in the AM category. In fact, he's 3rd in that class right now. So Godrecki's not really fighting him for position, just overall. But it doesn't seem like Igor is in any mood to just pull off and let him by.
And we've officially crossed halfway as Godrecki finally gets by that number 7 in the final corner there. But I say that because we're past halfway. I'm seeing several cars that have not come down pit lane. So I believe this is kind of a pick your own strategy, as we've got a lead change up front as well.
Simonchek has somehow managed to sneak by the 22. Braun has certainly been the dominant car. Now, he's been under threat a couple times. This time, he was not able to rebuff the advances of Yerne, so he'll go up to the lead. You talked about him seeming to have the better pace. Will he be able to stretch a gap now that he's got clear air?
That's the question, and throughout this race so far, Braun has not been able to run away from Simonchek, right? It's only been about a second, maybe up to 2 seconds. Well, now that the two have swapped around, let's see who's got the pace.
We are still waiting for a pit stop from Tom D up there in 4th place. Matt Wright has not taken one as well. So yeah, it's just varying strategies. Iskanitis also has not pitted along with Bandbev, and we've got a replay of the pass. Is this a mistake? That looks like a mistake. Just off into the grass. Does not need a second invitation. Simonchek moves into 1st.
It was almost like the flames out the pipe in the accelerating, but look at this. Braun through turn number 9, just taking the low lane. I did not see that one coming so fast.
Neither did I. Wow. What is Braun managing his pace maybe a little bit here then? Or was there a mistake that we didn't see from Yerne that allowed him to get back through? Because that seems surprisingly quick that he would be back on him, be able to somehow retake that lead.
Now, I am purely speculating here, Joe. I was making the comment that Simonchek was so good through the corners I wonder if he just kind of used up the tire a little bit, kind of overheated it, and then just has to cool things back down while Braun was able to keep those nice and consistent, albeit driving off the track for just a little bit.
Oh, and some of it could be maybe we're seeing the Camaro has slightly better straight line speed. Maybe, like you said, if it was worn out for Siemenchich, if he had a bad exit, that'll make him very vulnerable to that Camaro. Malin's still leading down in the AM class right now. Salmon in behind him is not fighting him for position because he's a pro. You have to go to Bavenbeck to reach the second place car. That gap, how far is that actually? Let me check.
I'm checking, it's about 22 seconds right
yeah.
now. So it looks like Mike Malin, as long as he's able to keep this pace, he should be able to stay in front of Bavenbeck, who is yet to come down pit road as well.
I'm going to try the one-stop strategy, I assume. I doubt they can make it on fuel. At least that's what it was implied when we were discussing before the race, that they will at least need a pit stop to have enough fuel to make it to the end. Some of the drivers very much stretching it as far as they dare go. Battle for the lead is on again once more as Siemenchich has recovered and is going to see if he can repass that number 22. Will he need a mistake for a second time, or can he try and do it just on merit?
I love watching these drivers attack the S section here in these big old muscle cars. It is exactly like what it was back in the day with Trans Am, just jumping the cars over the curbs, really using more of the grass than the racetrack in certain parts.
Yeah, I think with these things being so compliant, you can afford to brush that grass just a little bit, shorten up the track however you can. Coming down through 7. Once again, look at the diamond for the 22 in comparison to the 17, who tries to keep it tucked in down to the apex all the way through that hairpin. It's not getting in position, but if the 22 goes just that little bit farther to the outside, surely we're going to see Siemenchich again pounce.
You were talking about, hey, does the Camaro maybe have a little bit better speed than the Firebird? And to bring up the stats of the car, now everything races a little bit differently, right? The Chevy Camaro, 412 horsepower, 1526 on the kilos on the weight. The Pontiac Firebird back here, only 389 horsepower and even more, 1621 kilos on the weight. So I have a feeling that you're right, Joe, that Camaro might be a rocket in the straight line.
Certainly seems like Yerne is not able to get close enough to attack here in the corners. So let's stay on board for a bit. Let's watch, because if this is the case, then I think we're going to see Siemenchich start to really gain on him through the S's now.
This is that section. Throw it into turn number 2, bounce it off of that kind of apex berm. Hopefully it stays on the track for the rest of them. Both of these drivers really kind of straightening out this S section. What I'm noticing right here, right? I've noticed that Yerne is a little bit more aggressive with some of those apex curbs leading into what is turn number 6. And the more you can straighten the track, kind of the more you can take advantage of the brakes.
That's a good point, yeah. And they've got lap traffic now coming up in front. One of them looking like I thought he was going to pull off to the side, but he'll go back to the racing line now. Now he pulls off to the left, allowing the leaders through. A tiny distraction for Braun. Is that enough? Still close to the back of that navy blue machine. And no dice. 2 more in front of him.
Through this incredibly long right-hander known as turn 8. Just fighting the grip between the front end and the back end, making sure that the entire car is happy, which isn't always easy to be done here, and then rocket down the back straightaway. And Joe, like you were mentioning just a few turns ago, I see more lap traffic just on the horizon that these leaders are going to have to deal with.
Indeed. I have to wonder, Joey, because I'm always curious to ask you these sorts of things. If you were given a chance to drive these cars back in this
100%.
era,
Yes.
even with the tires, because I know you're picky about your tires.
Yeah, but that's just how it was back then. There wasn't a difference, you know? I wouldn't be able to pick a new tire. It just kind of, it is what it is.
Gotcha. Okay. So you have to take the good with the bad.
But to answer your question, Joe, I really like the further you go back with the cars because there's more character. Now, I know that there's characters between the new Lexus and the Mustang GT3s and all this stuff, but look at how different each one of these cars are back then. And they really do kind of drive differently. You have to get to know them. That's what I like. And was that Hillebrand hard in the turn 9 wall?
It was indeed. Maybe also some other brakes starting to go away here. The car does not look 100%. It wobbles off the corner. He was still fighting with Robillard. Hillebrand, is he going to be able to finish this race now? That was a big thwack.
I think the only promising hopes is we've seen a lot of these drivers make contact and then not have to retire, but definitely looks like there's something wrong with this one. Now straight lining the S's to make sure to stay out of the way of some of the competitors. So Hillebrand realizes there's something wrong with the car and letting a few of them by.
Wonder if it's something with left-hand turns a little bit, which would make no, it would be right-hand turns since he hit the left-hand side of the car, I would think. Because he was cutting the same series like every other in the S's there. Let's see what it looks like through turn 7. Seems to be turning okay there.
Yeah, the other thing that it very well could be, Joe, is that when you smack a wall like that and you kind of get off of your rhythm, off of the racing line as a driver, it can take a turn to kind of gather it all back up, especially if you're looking in the mirrors, people are going by you. So fingers crossed there's not too much damage here to Hillebrand's car, that it maybe was just a little bit of a mental lapse.
Yeah, love to see him try and race on. He's given us so much entertainment. Hate to lose him. He's fought hard for where he is out on track. Down to 8th, though, because of that loss, as Matt Wright managed to get by. Polyakov back here in the pro class, or excuse me, the AM class, rather, up to third place, actually. So, yeah, behind Bavin Beck. Still catching him. It's about 1.5 seconds between them. I'm seeing on the timing screen now. So he's doing what he can to try and gain and get by him. I thought that they were reversed around that, or there was like a 22-second gap or something between them.
It's a 20-second gap between first and second place in AM, and then Bavenbeck has Polyakov definitely closing in for what is second place. And this is going to be the fight, because I'm looking at the last lap time from Polyakov of 50.7. From Bavenbeck, the number 66 on screen, a 153.8. And Bavenbeck has still yet to come down pit road. I wonder if there was a mistake or if that's the fall off and not coming down.
Yeah, so Hillebrand will probably be taking some repairs, I got to think, after that smack. You should know better. If you add a D to that name, you got Hildebrand, and that driver knows about hitting a wall in the final turn.
Man, I'm going to stop you right there on that one. So we watch Mike Mallon go through turn number 9. It's a great reference, Joe, but man.
Mike Mallon still leading, apparently with a massive gap over the next car back in that AM class, is doing what he needs to do to try to come away with the win. Simoncic back behind Braun here, only 7/10 back. Braun responding after he was put under threat a little bit earlier on, trying to see now if he can keep Yerne from making another attack like that, put him at arm's length.
Not given up by any means is Simoncic, just keeping that Camaro honest the whole race. That's exactly what we want to see. And I gotta say, that Firebird is starting to win me over, Joe. You said it was your favorite before we started the race. I just love when it's got both pipes spitting out the flames. It just looks pretty gosh dang cool. Absolutely.
I mean, I was born in the 80s, so it's evocative of those muscle cars for me, having seen them around and seen them showing up on TV and in posters, and just a very cool looking car. Plus, my first car was a Pontiac, so Of course, I'm going to be partial to that, but Siemenchich is wielding it to great effect here today. Question is, does he have enough to try and be ahead by the checkered flag? We're coming down to those last 25 laps soon. So will we see the drivers on the two-stop strategy start to pit in here in a couple laps?
Looks like we've got 10 cars still on the lead lap, and maybe about 8 or so that have unfortunately fallen out of today's race, but the race up front is only separated by a few car lengths between Braun and Siemenchich. I wonder if there's going to be another mistake out of Braun. Remember, we saw him drive it off the racetrack earlier, and then we saw Siemenchich really straight line the S's through some sections, and now we're seeing Braun really take advantage of that section of the racetrack. So I wonder if they're just kind of playing a chess game as well.
That could be. We don't know what exactly is going on with the tires in these cars in terms of how they're going to be working over the full race, if we're going to see some differences in them later on. Oh, that's a little wide from the 22. Braun going to tuck it back in, at least by the second apex, to prevent him from being overtaken. But the more times that he opens that door, the more times I'm sure the 17 is just going to see if he can sneak in there.
And I mean, Siemenchich has been really, really close this lap again. Closing it in through turn 8, just right off of the bumper, keeping Braun honest, saying, hey, you better be able to put the power down. If you wag the tail too much, I'm going to be here to take advantage, just like how I was that time when you drove it off the racetrack earlier. And looks like a car actually driving off the racetrack right in front of him. I believe that might have been Mike Honcho in that City Chevrolet car.
I wonder if, yeah, that looks like he's damaged, so he must have had a problem out on track. He's just trying to drive it back to pit lane for now. There he is on screen, and it is not tracking straight.
And something I'm noticing, bravo on not only the City Chevrolet, but the name to match as well. The Mike Honcho from Ricky Bobby to go along with the paint scheme. Just well done, sir.
I mean, now he just needs like a fire suit from Grand Prix if he's going to go for all the classic racing movies. So, is he going to stay out? I thought he was going to try and come in. There he goes. Eventually found his way through, and thankfully, despite some cones blocking his way, he's going to get down to his stall.
Just a little bit of an adventure getting down into pit road as we check back in on Polyakov. Now he has caught up with this car right in front of him, this number 66. So this is the battle for the AM class second place.
Bavenbeck is going to try and hold on to that P2, but he's not had the speed, unfortunately. Just has that Camaro kind of hunting him down. This is another of our Camaro versus Firebird situation, but reversed. It is the Camaro behind. So what will this look like?
Yeah, this will kind of give us a little bit of insight to the two different cars as well. And we were making the comment up front that Braun in the Camaro was able to keep that straightaway speed, while Siemenchich in the Firebird was able to close it in through the corners. But I feel like Polyakov is definitely the faster of these two, and I feel like the number 66 right in front of him, he's continuing to just kind of bleed a little bit every single corner, and here comes Polyakov. It's only going to be a matter of maybe another lap or two before he gets an opportunity.
Oh, way out to the outside. Polyakov will try and regroup after that one, as that was not the racing line through turn 8. And that allows the Firebird to just pull away a little bit from them. And that car behind them is not for position as well. That'd be Carmen, who is 30 seconds behind, so he's nowhere near them.
Through this fast kink off of the back straightaway. We're going to see if Polyakov throws it down the inside, which exactly he does. He's going to try to get that Camaro to stick down the low lane around turn number 9. You see Bavenbeck try to fight it back with an over-under and a big wag of the tail. Polyakov takes second place in the AM class.
Well, that happened surprisingly quickly, as the Firebird able to fight back as Matt Wright now catching up here to Robillard as well. Haven't talked about Matt in some time, but clearly is looking quick in comparison to that Camaro in front of him. So the Barracuda going to try and see if he can overtake as they come up to lap traffic going on either side, trying to find a way through. Thankfully, looks like the Camaro is able to sneak by.
I think Matt Wright chose wiser right there. He saw Robillard get up the inside of the lap car, and there just wasn't room for that big old Plymouth to do the same thing, so he waited to the next corner to then drive by the lap car. That was good decision-making from that number 49.
Still racing left to go. He'll get some time. He'll get some chances as this goes on. But as the 49 continues to try and stay at least within the mirrors of Robillard, he has lost maybe a few car lengths just from that one little moment. Still waiting to see if we get more drivers in for their second stop. So far, we've only had Chris Gordon, Nicholas Hillebrand, and Deedon Bush, who have pitted twice. Mike Honcho has as well, but he's 6 laps down.
Remember, these cars came in, well, at least Siemenchich came in right about 25 or so. And I feel like if you're going to stick to just a normal 2-stop strategy, your pit stop, yeah, in the next handful of laps, we're working lap 46. So the other thing we haven't talked about is an overcut or an undercut if you're Siemenchich. That would be an interesting opportunity, especially seeing how far these cars can stretch it on the fuel. I wonder if maybe just a lap or two of clean air is exactly what the number 17 needs.
We'll have to see if they do come in for that second stop to try and change it around as they break down into turn 8, try and get on the throttle onto the back stretch once more. Let's see if we pull away from Siemenchich along this long straightaway with the grunt underneath that Camaro. Not much, but he's also given him a slipstream. It does look like it's proving pretty difficult for that 17 to catch up enough to try and make a pass stick. He did once already from what we've witnessed, but it didn't stay long.
What I noticed right there out of the second place car is going into turn 9, he definitely kind of lifted off of the gas, let our leader kind of charge into the corner, and now look what that does. It really benefits him on exit. When we talk about driving and fast lap times, I say it all the time. Somebody taught me who's way smarter. Sometimes you actually have to drive slower in order to go faster.
Yeah, just back it off. Don't try and overwork the car and make sure that you just hit your marks. So far, I think Devin's doing that beautifully out here today. We've seen a few hiccups for him, getting a little bit off the racing line, but unfortunately for Siemenchich, nothing that has allowed him to be able to get through and stay there. More lap traffic now in front of them, yet offering more chances for things to kind of switch up, to get mixed up out here that Yerne has been hoping and pining for.
Whenever you run up on those lapped cars, it's just a potential variable. Maybe the door opens, maybe you actually lose time, but you just never know. As actually Yerne looks down to the inside there in turn number 8, just kind of trying to fill the mirror of our leader. Just want to draw back from maybe a dozen or so laps ago, maybe even more than that now, where Braun drove it off into that braking zone. So if you're that second place car and you can just kind of present yourself in an area where he's not expecting it, you can kind of throw the leader off of their rhythm, maybe force him into another mistake.
You can see the number on the tower going down. He gained about half a tenth riding behind him, so definitely is pulling a little bit, at least was that time, out of the corner. Hillebrand's still out there. Not sure if he had an issue, because I saw a car off track next to him there as soon as we turned the camera to him. He's 20th overall, and I believe somewhere around 14th or 15th in class right now.
And something to notice about that car that we were just following as we're watching Robillard and right here is that it looked like Hillebrand was one of the first cars to come down and complete that second pit stop, Joe.
Sorry, that was Robillard had quite a wiggle there coming onto the back straight. So I thought maybe we'd see the 49 try for something. Indeed, we will. The 98 does not defend on the entry into the kink, but he will chop down on him, coming past us and down into turn 9. So he thought that he was clear, and he was right this time.
I love watching those static cameras, especially of this big orange school bus barreling towards you. It just seems like this is like a 10,000-pound vehicle doing 170 miles an hour just flying right by you. And this is one of our front runners. If you remember Tom D, he was up inside of the top 5. So this second round of pit stops definitely starting to take place.
Ooh, still stretching the car out to the exits of the corners here. Simoncic, I think he knows that he needs to get those better runs. It looks like he's just pushing it farther and farther to see what he can do. This time it didn't work out. Where are we going to see D return to the track here? Looks like about 8th place now that he's back out and up to speed. Are either of these drivers also pit in? Who's going to be our highest finisher of those who try this 2-stop strategy? I think right now, was that his second stop, or is that his first stop?
I see one stop on his
too.
timesheet right now, so that might have been his first stop. But
yeah.
I do want to say, though, because we only have 20 laps left, and I know for a fact that these drivers, these front two, stretched it to about lap 25 or so. So they are in the good if they stopped right now to make it all the way to the end. It just depends on kind of how they want to split up this final stage, if they want to use up the tire right now, or if they want to use it up a little bit later in that second kind of green flag run here.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe there are few drivers actually doing the 2-stop. Maybe it was more a case of pitting early or pitting late to try and run your race. As we hop on board with Simoncic, just tantalizingly close to that Chevy. He can see the bow tie. It feels closer than before, but maybe I'm misremembering.
And no, this definitely feels closer. I think you hit the nail on the head earlier, Joe, that Camaro just has a little bit more grunt. And oh, there's a lap car coming on right in front of the leaders. Thankfully, he realized what was on the racetrack, did not interfere with the battle at all. But just look at the grunt that the Camaro has off of the first third of the straightaway. It just seems to get off the corner very well.
Simoncic was farther behind that time. It was 3/10 by the time they came onto the back stretch. Needs to be about 2/10 or closer exiting, I think, to have an actual shot at trying to make a move here, because he's just a little too far back by the time they get to the end of the straight. They're going to go by more of the lap traffic. This is impressively all happening 30 seconds ahead of Canton, and really is starting to look like some of those old school races where they had pretty wide margins at times.
Here's Robillard. Yeah, I was going to say this was Devin Braun coming into pit lane. He was kind of pinching off the exit of turn number 9. So he is sticking to that 25 laps on the first stint, 25 laps on the second stint, and then it'll be 20 laps to end it. While Simoncic right here, he is going to say, I'll take the clean air for one lap, go in qualifying mode, and try to pull out this overcut.
As hard as he can. He's got that clear circuit in front of him. If he felt like he had better speed, especially through some of these twistier portions, now is the time to unleash it as he breaks down into turn 7. Looks like Braun going to return to the track in second place. Doesn't really lose much. Cantonen is part of that because he was so far behind, and he's also pitted in for his last stop.
And I think crucially for Braun out front is that he returned back out onto the racetrack in a clean section, so he doesn't have to deal with any other cars out there. So this will be really interesting between our two front runners, which pit stop strategy is going to play out.
Kirsten kind of cycling up to the order a little bit here now to 5th place. Haven't seen Nick in some time, but was kind of fighting for those top spots early on, then took that early pit stop, and we weren't quite sure where Nick was supposed to wind up just because everybody was kind of out running their own race. Meanwhile, Chris Gordon getting very sideways in his Mustang off of the final turn.
That's just style points out there, and the cooler you look, the more ladies you get at the end of the day.
Well, I mean, you're going to get some ladies or gentlemen in this car, that is for sure, as it's hard to resist the charm of a Mustang. And Chris going to come up into the braking zone of turn 6, riding in 16th place. He has also taken 2 stops. Mike Mallon in front of him has taken his second stop and given away that lead. I believe Bavenbeck is now our AM leader, but he has yet to stop in this race.
Looks like we got Mike Honcho back out on the racetrack. So he is the last car officially on the, on the track, rolling around right now in 28th. I see 7 laps down.
Through the first corner. Once again, give him credit for not giving up and sticking with it. Although certainly not without mistakes out there, as Honcho's still having a few offs from time to time. And in the background, that is one of our CUDAs in pit lane.
I believe it is Matt Wright in pit lane. Remember, he was that orange Plymouth Barracuda that was really doing a great job making his way up through the field. As this is Nicholas Kirsten in this Ford Mustang Boss 302, a very good cream and red vintage livery out there.
And if I'm seeing correctly, that is Matt Wright's first pit stop of the race. I'm guessing his only pit stop of the race. Is he back out? Yeah, he just returned to the track in about 7th position as Robillard sneaks by. So,
Joe, I wonder, with some cars not coming down pit road yet, some cars doing 1 stop, you think Semenchek is going to come down pit road, or you think he's just going to drive it out to the end?
I mean, I always like
35 seconds, right?
Yeah, and I always like a driver that's willing to roll the dice. So if it was me, I'd say, yeah, let's go for it. Let's stay out. We got the track position. Clearly, we know we're fast. If the tires will last, I mean, might as well force Braun to try and catch him back up.
Absolutely. I'm on the same page as you. I think the only kind of wrench in that strategy is if you didn't put enough fuel in it to make it to the end, you're going to have to come down pit road. But that, I don't know. He could have enough fuel in the car.
Semenchik has quite a history here on R Factor 2, known as a very good driver, top level here on this sim. So he knows what he's doing, and we're kind of left to wonder what that exactly is going to be in the end, because we don't know what his plan is on strategy. Braun down to 33 seconds, 34 seconds, really might as well call it at this stage. So he's caught a little bit, but even if he catches a second a lap, that's not enough.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to mention, is that we are under 20 laps to go, and it is a 33 second gap, like you were just saying. So yeah, you'd have to not only chop that gap down 1+ second per lap, but then you'd actually have to get by Semenchek at the end of this thing. And we've seen how evenly paced those two cars are.
Genisus holds the fastest lap of the race right now as well. So he's been absolutely flying out there. In fact, I think it's about 0.2 quicker than Braun's fastest lap. That answers our question very quickly. Semenchik is not going to try to go to the finish. He is going to pit in. But what were these last laps like in comparison, as some of our drivers here trying to snake their way through traffic that is sideways, including, I think that was Polyakov that was having to try and find some space.
Well, it is definitely the summer that Mike Honcho went away. He needs his buddy Ricky Bobby as a driver coach out there right now. So Mike Honcho gets it back pointed the right direction, but definitely got some things to learn out there.
Indeed. So carrying on, have we had any DNF since lately? No, not since Pedersen, Kenny, and Marazzi, still our last drivers to have fallen out of this race. Honcho, the last on the field, 28 drivers still running out of our 37 starters in today's event. Semenchik being caught up by Braun. Although, is Yerne back out? I think he's back out ahead of him.
7 seconds is what I'm showing in front of the number 22. Now, I know that is a blue and yellow Camaro behind, but that is not the right number behind Simonchech. So Yerne evidently did a wonder on that pit stop cycle.
In fact, fantastic job. Just a little bit shorter, maybe better on the fuel. Wonder if there is a bit of difference between these cars on how thirsty they are as well. Maybe that 17 didn't need to use as much. He spent all that time sitting behind him too. Maybe he kind of pulled a dummy on both Braun and us. Maybe he was actually just sipping the fuel sitting there.
I think it could be, but Joe, 6 seconds is pretty drastic in the course of about 5 laps or so, maybe 4 laps. What I am going to assume is Devin Braun either had a mistake somewhere that we missed, or he ran into a bunch of lapped cars that checked him up, definitely.
Checking back into Matt Wright. He's returned in 7th place, but that is for position in front of him for Robillard, not the 55. That's a lapped car. He's pulling out of the way. But looks like Jackson, once again, I mean, I'm trying to think of a time we have not seen Jackson in a battle out on this track. Every single time we've turned the cameras, he's fighting somebody.
Absolutely. You're right. From that early battle when it was just all Camaro, 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 to now Matt Wright just all over the back of him in this orange Plymouth Cuda. So Jackson, he's going to probably be worn out by the end of this one. Just always had that heart rate up, always locked into a fight on the track.
I mean, I'm sure these cars keep your heart rate up no matter what over the course of the race. They're probably a right handful to deal with mentally as well as physically. And down into the braking of the final corner. Here we go, big launch maybe for that Barracuda, trying to set him up. We're gonna hop on board, riding on the dash.
I love these onboard shots, listening to this car rumble its way through Riverside. And you see Matt really on the racing line early. Robillard cuts in at the last second, and I have a feeling this Plymouth Cuda might have a little bit more speed than that Camaro right in front of him.
Certainly has been feeling like it, but it seems like the Camaro is actually a little bit more nimble through the S's. Kind of expect that. I mean, you described this car as a bus, and yeah, it is big, it is heavy, it is wide too, but that means that trying to change direction is that much more difficult.
A school bus, Joe. It's even painted like one out.
It is. He just needs he needs a little stop sign that he can kind of flick out to the side.
That would be great. Watching that Camaro, though, is something we've seen all day long, and I pointed it out earlier. Look at how soft these things are, picking up the front wheels, the inside front wheels going into some of these corners. It really reminds me of how these cars really were. That's exactly how they would drive, and just kind of lean on that outside rear tire. Use your right foot as the steering device.
This is a pretty good run here. I'm not sure if he's going to be close enough, but yeah, you know, three-wheeling it around these corners kind of reminds me of that. This is probably why for the longest time, you know, you'd have a lot of drivers that would come up from the dirt ovals and be rather successful on the roadside because they were just as soft on the suspension. Yeah, no pass this time into turn 9. It definitely feels reminiscent to what you see on the dirt side of things.
The other thing, we haven't gotten too nerdy with the suspension geometry and all of that, but a lot of these cars, they're straight axle cars, and there's not a whole lot you can do with the rear end with the suspension setup. So really, in order to get them hooked up, you got to run them extremely soft, so that way those 2 tires on the back end, they actually stay on the ground.
Only thing I feel like is missing here is a Chevelle. Would love to see that in this group in terms of old muscle cars, but Godrecki is back up to 12th. Remember, he was well down the order. This is Salmonen that he's chasing. This is for position, so that's another pro driver just in front of him.
Go down the back straightaway here, and remember, Godrecki had a much better beginning half of this race than the middle, so think Franek just kind of on the recovery charge, recouping whatever positions they can. And if memory serves me correct, I believe everybody outside of the top 10 is one lap down as we see Godrecki just kind of slide down to the inside there in turn 9.
That was clinical. I mean, he smoked the tires just the tiniest bit, but he saw the opening, measured it perfectly, and came out ahead of the 208. So now he's got to set his sights forward to Darren Andrews, 50 seconds up the road. No big deal, trying to cut that down in about 15 laps or so. Hillebrand, who we've checked in with from time to time. Where is he at this stage? Because I know he went well towards the back. Yeah, he's still 17th.
Yeah,
Actually, no, or is he 13th here? Oh, excuse me, 13th in class. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, 17th overall, and he's the first of the cars 2 laps down, and it just isn't really representative of his speed. We were watching him up towards the front, kind of like Robillard, just always locked into a battle. Just a couple incidents threw him way further back.
If we get anybody else pitting in, we got some information from Reese Gardner. Says that fuel tank is filled before the tires are finished, so the tires are about 23 seconds. So if they are good for some speed, you got to weigh whether or not it is worth taking them out there. At this stage, we saw Matt right in, but I don't see him having marked gone to the pits on our timing screen, which is a bit weird. And Genisus also looks like he has not been in. So I think there's a potential that we haven't seen a couple drivers pit in unless our timing and scoring is just missing a trick here.
Yeah, which it quite possibly could have as Mike Mallon goes down that back straightaway. He's doing a terrific job. I think it's still about 22, 23 seconds over Bavenbeck there, who that is second in the AM class. So all Mike's got to do is keep on logging laps. The other thing that I was going to point out here, Joe, is that after those pit stops, Simonchek returned about 6 seconds up the road. Well, now it's cut down to about 4.1 seconds and continuing to close.
Okay. So, and if I'm hearing correctly in the background, we think maybe Tierney did not take tires on that one. So that might explain the difference in pace and the quicker pit stop.
And timing and scoring, last lap, Braun in second, a 48.5. Our leader, Yerne, out front, a 48.89. So almost half a second, about 0.4 of a second taken out of it just that last lap.
Interesting. About 13 or 14 laps to go here and 4 seconds. I think that 0.3 of a lap might actually do it if you can keep that up. We'll watch and see what it is this time by. Some of the traffic might have something to say about that, or just limiting the mistakes out there, because we've seen drivers slipping and sliding and going off track, and Braun is not immune to that himself in this race. As Simonchik blasts across the line, he is going to run, it looks like a 48.9. Well, Braun crosses, and this one's going to be a 48.6. Another 0.3. Again, very consistent.
Yeah, just kind of, that's exactly what you have to do. And if you get too greedy with it, if you're in Devin Braun's situation and you're starting to take out bigger chunks, you're often kind of more prone to mistakes. So just take out what you can, see if you can crawl your way back to the lead. And if anything, you've got the red mist going. You wonder, how the heck did Yerne get out so far in front of me after the pit stop cycle? But look at this. You see him out your windshield. You see it closing the gap. You know you're the faster of the two cars. You know you're the faster of the two drivers today after leading so many laps. It's just, can you go back up there and get the job done?
Being hunted by a Barracuda. Is this going to be a pass coming down into the braking? It's a heavier car. Probably has to hit the binders that much earlier, in the 49 of Matt Wright. Cannot do it quite yet. Robillard going to stay ahead in that Camaro, but for how much longer? I think a poor exit out of a corner might put paid to that, because the Barracuda is going to swallow him up.
I feel like if you're racing one of these Plymouth Barracudas, you need to have the Hart 8-track on blast ready to go when you come up behind some of these cars. Really put that Barracuda soundtrack out there.
Oop, and that was another one of our red car's off the circuit. Trying to figure out who that was. May have been Fleur, I think, in the 52. I'm not entirely certain. We'll check in on that in a bit. Starzov is also in pit lane in the 77. In the meantime, Braun coming across the line has it down to less than 4 seconds between them. And in fact, this last time, 49-1 for Siemenchich, 48-6. Braun is sticking the same, whereas Yerne is losing time.
And look at the 22 just full on straight line the chicane. If you haven't seen a driver on full attack mode, well, this is what it looks like. And yeah, you go back and watch old footage of Riverside. This is exactly what those drivers did. They said, the heck with the turns, I'm going to go straight.
I mean, honestly, it kind of takes me back. There's a famous clip of Dale Earnhardt making a pass that way. Just decided, don't need a corner there. And off he goes past another car that he was being held up by and didn't want anything to do with after that one. Braun down to 3 seconds between them and closing.
I think that this section of the racetrack might be a little bit telling as we watch Matt Wright continue to charge, just try to get up underneath Robillard right in front of him. That number 98 seems pretty good off of the corner, albeit wagging the tail. Matt Wright has got to be getting frustrated. I mean, how many laps can you follow the same exact car without kind of forcing an issue? Eventually, I have a feeling it's going to boil over at some point.
Oh, maybe like that, where he just about touches the rear of that Camaro, and he has to slow up, I think, with that off track, maybe losing sight of the circuit. He was so tight in behind that multicolored machine. We're going to hop on board. More traffic in front of them as well.
Riding on board this Plymouth Cuda here, chasing down Robillard, just as you were saying, gonna have to deal with the lap traffic in quite a sketchy area. This is a slow turn. You really got to be able to clear them in order to be able to put the power down coming out of the corner here. So both of these cars looking for their best way around, and this might be an opportunity for Matt Wright as Robillard real squirrely off the corner.
He's looking to the inside, switches lanes. Maybe he'll go for the over-under here. Or will that lapped car hold up Jackson enough to give the advantage? Oh, he slides up. This is it. He's going to be vulnerable as the Barracuda smells blood in the water.
It's just that last little bit of the corner. It seems like turn 8 lasts forever out there, and both of the cars got a little bit loose, and it was actually Robillard that got the power down a little bit easier coming out of 8. So here it is, the fast kink off of the back straightaway. Matt Wright in that orange Barracuda still searching for a way around.
Thought for sure that was finally going to be it. So the 42 in front of them gets out of the way of one. But Matt Wright has a heck of a time trying to make that pass. Switches back over him. This is it. Gets a much better run down the main straight. He's through.
What a great piece of racecraft from Matt Wright. I did not see that coming. Just used the acceleration phase over the start-finish line and swooped away that line from Jackson.
I thought he was going to be held up completely through turn 9 by that lapped car, but no, it was the complete opposite. The 98 maybe a little bit deep into there. In fact, speaking of deep, doesn't look like he's too happy with the braking coming into turn 6.
And this is just kind of a different kind of mindset for Matt right now. You've been given chase the whole time, and that has been the mood, and you got to reset now. Now you got to run away from Jackson. Don't make any mistakes. Don't drift out too wide. Otherwise, Robillard will take advantage.
Braun's down to less than 3 seconds, but last lap was only 1/10 quicker. Siemenchich responding back to try and see if he can hold him at bay. If he can do more laps like that, then 1/10 of a second at a time is not going to be enough for Devin, and he won't be able to catch him in time. But I'm kind of curious if he does get up to him, is he going to have an easier time passing Yerne than Yerne did him?
The number 4 car did an excellent job right there, letting Braun to the inside. I was going to say they're coming up on a lot of lap traffic here, Joe, and it's just kind of spread out. So it's not necessarily big groups of cars, but if you catch one of these cars in the wrong area, you can definitely lose a lot of time or just wag the tail huge like Devin Braun was doing right there. You can tell that driver, he is on all gas, no brakes right now. He's doing everything in his wheelhouse to chase down our leader.
Well, only 10 out of the 38 starters are still on the lead lap. So yeah, the lead cars have definitely put on some impressive pace here today. Laps the vast majority of the field. Coming down into the braking as we continue to watch Siemenchich. Surely he's going to start becoming aware that Braun is closing into him each and every lap as they cross the line. This time, let's see what the difference is going to be as we are down to 10 laps to go. Siemenchich with a 48.8. Braun is going to be a 48.7. Another 10th knocked off. I think Yerne is responding.
Well, Yerne is going to have probably a lap or two here of clean racetrack where he can just go all out, not have to worry about any of the lapped cars, while Braun behind him still has to get by that one lapper. So it's just kind of the seesaw battle, right? The ebb and flow that you always have to deal with. And there you see in the background that Braun was able to actually make his way by without losing any sort of time. So now is 2.6 seconds between these top two. And actually, look at that. Yerne went way wide there in turn number 7. So that's going to allow Braun to close it up even more.
I can see that number start trickling down a little bit, down to 2.3 seconds now. So the two of them are getting ever closer here as Celadon in that number 4, trying to battle with the 18 car currently. Is this for position? Yes, it is. That's Mark Johnson. That said, Johnson racing in AM, David racing in Pro.
You know, we haven't seen too many of the challengers out here. We've seen a few of the Cudas and a lot of the Camaros, a lot of the Mustangs, but this big old green Challenger Dodge product looking to the inside, trying to go too wide, all 4 wheels in the grass through the kink, and now he's going to have to go the long way around turn number 9. Looks like the 4 is going to get it done.
Yeah, it seems like he's got the legs here, although the Mustang tries to cut back underneath. As nimble as that car is, does not have the grunt of the Dodge, it seems, down the main straight. Chris Gordon in the number 88. He's sitting in 18th currently, and that is the car looking for Steve Carman in front of him. That is for position between what looks like a pair of Mustangs.
This is just off of that AM podium. This is basically 4th place in AM. So we've got 2 Mustangs fighting it out back here for what is 17th and 18th on the racetrack. Starting another lap and jump in through the S's one more time, just giving chase, seeing if you can force that mistake, or even better, just stay as consistent as possible. Take advantage when the others make that mistake.
Yeah, we've seen plenty of them out there today. Drivers certainly have their hands full with these machines, try and keep them pointed forward on the track as the 88 car continues to try and set himself up. Both of them are running out of tire as they get very sideways down off of turn 6. That's going to unfortunately prevent that 88 from getting a good chance on trying to overtake. So Chris Gordon, and this time, wow, just finds the grip on the inside of turn 7, outguns him off the corner, but he's not completely done. He's on the wrong side into 8.
And I think that the blue 69 is kind of realizing that he was just on the wrong side of the road, and there he is, just a little bit wide again. So the 88 of Chris Gordon is going to really gap that battle now. Onto the back straightaway with a good exit. Really doesn't have to worry about that car anymore.
Not too many close battles out there right now, although the lead is continuing to close in down to less than 2.5 seconds. Wright and Robillard separating after they switched places. Wright unfortunately doesn't look like he's got enough to catch D. We might want to keep half an eye on D and Kirsten as well, because there's only 2.5 seconds between them. Devin Braun leaving no space for the lapped cars, as he's not willing to give up anything right now. He is on a mission In fact, he can see his rival in front of him now.
I think Mike Honcho was trying to give the slingshot to his buddy Devin Braun there as we see the Ceti Chevrolet drive it off the racetrack behind our second place runner. So Devin just back on the horse. It was down to about 1.6 seconds, Joe, and I think that was Urne getting checked up from one of these lapped cars, but now the race is back on.
Indeed. They were pretty similar on lap time last time around, within a few hundredths of one another. There is our leader in the red and white Pontiac Firebird, as the 17 does his best to keep himself in the lead of this race. Has stopped, but had what we believe was a no tire change stop over Braun, who did change tires and has been using that rubber to try and make up the gap and close in. So far, he's chopped off nearly 4 seconds.
And based off of our timing and scoring, Joe, you know, I'll know for next time, but I wonder if that pit stop cycle is shown when they do actually take the tires coming down pit road.
That's a good question. We'll have to watch and see if we can get that information for the next race. So as he cuts through these various S's sections, taking as much of the track as he can before the sim penalizes him for cutting the course. Ooh, locking the tires up a little bit on the way into that one, though. As we check back with the 22, it is now less than 2 seconds.
Yeah, he's right there, and if you're Devin Braun, you can visually see how much faster you are than this Firebird out in front of you. You've been catching them at 0.3, 0.4, sometimes even 0.5 of a second per lap. So I have a feeling once the 22 gets to the back end of that Firebird, where is the move going to come from? I just think it's where he catches them, honestly.
It'll all depend on if he's got that pace or the straight line speed to try and do it. Was that a slide from Semenchik coming through turn 8? He looked a little bit offline. The gap has not come down, so maybe that was a trick in my eye, but it is still at 1.5 seconds.
I've been watching all of these hairpins. It is so fun to watch the cars just drive the front end through, the back end wags the tail, eventually comes back around, and then it's up to the driver with their right foot how greedy they want to get with those rear tires. And once again, Braun continues to close it in. It was 1.6 seconds going on to the back straightaway, now down to 1.4, and I'm seeing down to 1.2.
Believe, speaking of Donahue in these Camaros, it was Mark that once said, the car has enough power when I can leave tire marks all the way from the corner exit to the entry to the next corner.
Traction control. What is traction control, Joe? I think it was DW that said, you know what, give me the horsepower and my right foot will be the traction control.
Exactly. I agree completely. Make the drivers work for it. Keep the machines raw and analog, and it certainly will make it fun and entertaining to watch. It'll bring out the mistakes, and it's down to 1 second now. Braun is getting closer and closer. We are down to all of 5 or 6 laps to go here. Will he have enough time to try and make this pass when he gets within striking range?
We're going to see if Urne is going to prove me wrong out here. And now sim racers prove me wrong all the time. It's just that, to me, what I've seen today is this Camaro has been the dominant car. Yes, he's had to fend off other competitors. Yes, Semenchik has been up there to go up there and fight with Braun, but when we look at the overall pace, it's been Braun leading the laps. It's been Braun setting the pace. It's only been since the second pit stop that the Camaro has been chasing down the Firebird. I just feel that as soon as the opportunity comes for this Camaro, he's going to take advantage.
Yeah, I think you're probably right on that one. It's down to half a second now. He's picking up more and more time. I wonder if the slipstream also kind of helping that along that back stretch. Last lap was, it looks like half a second. Was that slower? No, excuse me. That's half a second faster between the pair of them. And Devin Braun this time as they cross the line, and I checked the timing. What was the difference between them? Looks like 0.2 of a second. down to 5 laps remaining now.
Joe, I got to correct you. That was 0.8 of a second difference
Holy
there. That
cow.
is Braun just reeling it in on this Firebird right in front. And look what's right up the road. We've got lap traffic that's definitely on the racing line. Yerne saying, get out of my way. I got to keep running.
Yerne is going to wish that that Firebird was a Barracuda now so that he could try and make that thing wider and prevent this car from trying to make a pass. He's going to have to take a shallow line into turn 7, but so does Braun. Both of them compromised.
The sand is running out of the hourglass, as I like to say out here. So the move is going to have to come sooner than later. We're just running out of laps. Can Yerne hang on out front? I think this would be one heck of a drive if he can hold off Braun for the win.
I mean, I'm pretty sure the sand is being used up on the outside of the track. I'm surprised they don't have a blue groove through some of these corners as they've been using it up so much out there. Now within 0.4 of a second, did we just see Siemenschich maybe weave a little bit to try and break that slipstream?
And here's that top end difference. Look at the Camaro just start to reel in the Firebird on the back straightaway, going defensive as Siemenschich into turn number 9, and we've got a side-by-side fight. It looks like Braun in a little bit deep, almost scrapes the wall but keeps it off.
Rim riding, that's not really the way you want to try and run this oval portion of the track, but he's still right on top of him. Will the 17 cover the inside? No, but he will at least hold the middle of the track. There's a hello, chrome to chrome.
Hey, if you didn't realize I was back here, hi, I'm waving my hand at you now. You feel me?
Oh, he's going to have a lot of laps to try and make this happen. But yeah, man, that was the confirmation for what we had suspected all race long, that the 22 just is so much better in a straight line compared to Siemenschich. They've got more of those lapped cars up in front of them. This could either help or hinder Yerne. It all kind of depends on where they catch them.
We are really running out of laps now, so more dust being kicked up right in front of our leaders. We're going to see if these two cars that are battling on the racetrack are going to either aid or just kind of hold up these two front leaders. They are looking to go side by side into turn 8 themselves. Joe, time to hold your breath.
Well, that's exactly what the 17 is doing as he gets into the back of the 11. But it looks like, he's going to make contact with the 22 as well. He turns him around. Valuable time has been lost. Devin now has to regain some of the gap.
That was Bruno Chacon. That car is 5 laps down from this lead battle. So definitely Braun and Siemenschich said, hey, out of my way. I got more important places to be.
I said it could either help or hinder Yerne, and that was a big help, up to nearly 1.5 seconds between them now. So Braun going to have the red mist because of that incident, no doubt, with precious few laps left. If he catches him again, he's basically got to do it right away.
Yeah, that's kind of what it's coming down to, is maybe a last lap effort, but I think there might have been 1 or 2 more lapped cars right in front of our leader, so it might not even come down to the last lap here, Joe. If our leader gets checked up, just like how Braun got checked up that previous lap, it could be on immediately.
Ooh,
there it is.
Yeah, right there. And he, again, gives a little bit of a tap to the car in front. This time, did he just scooter out to the wall? Well, I think he got away with it. So thankfully did not smash that barrier to the outside. And it came down about 0.5 seconds between Devin and Yerne.
I believe that's the number 7 car Dave purchased right in front of him now. So these cars, the further you get up through the field, the faster and faster they become, and they should be more aware as we check in on Matt Wright in this CUDA, still giving chase to Nicholas Kirsten now, trying to get up inside the top 5.
I didn't think he was going to be able to gain on him. I thought there was a much bigger gap, but here we go. The top end speed of that 49 sending it in. And is he going to use the extra weight to throw around? No, not quite. He's not going to lean on him. They're going to go side by side as, Siemenschich is out of the lead as well, it looks like. Doesn't get the position as the 49, but importantly, the 17 has gone off track somewhere.
I mean, look at it, 2.5 seconds between Braun and Simoncic now with only a couple laps remaining. I feel like that number 22 Camaro has been the pace setter all race long. Definitely a long, tall mountain to climb for Simoncic in a very short amount of time.
I don't think he's got the spoons left, unfortunately. There's just nothing left in that rubber at this stage. And I mean, if he does have the speed, why didn't he use it earlier? This is probably day done in terms of a win for the 17 car.
Just got to do everything that he can now to try to straight line these S's, try to draw back in that gap, but I'm noticing it's now up to 2.8 seconds, 3.2 now.
Braun just running away at this phase. Couldn't keep the mistakes out. Hopefully we'll be able to take a look maybe in a bit to see what happened, but if we can't, I think it's safe to assume that Yerne just could not keep it spick and span out there and keep it clean as he gave up the lead, and the 22 is going to once again control this race with all of 2 laps to go, 1.5 really.
And I know that the battle is kind of fizzled out. This is the replay of exactly what happened. So this is in turn 8, and the 7 car was well off of the racing line. Yerne just went charging in with his hair on fire too fast, drove it off the racetrack, and thankfully didn't spin it around. But I got to give him credit. Remember, he had to try something different in order to go up there and fight Braun, as we watch Matt Wright officially now make the pass, although he wags the tail coming out. This is going to open the door back up for the number 3 on the inside.
Side by side through one. That is a very fast corner, by the way, and down to the inside of turn 2. Finally, I think we've seen Matt Wright get that one done. Yeah, I agree. I liked seeing Yerne try and do something a little bit different to his rivals, see if it worked. I mean, honestly, if it weren't for a couple mistakes, for a little bit of lap traffic, I think he may have had a realistic shot at winning this one.
I totally agree, but look what it did. It provided him an opportunity to win, because if he didn't do that, he obviously knew that he didn't have the pace to get around Braun, so he did what any driver would do. He gave himself a shot at the win.
All right, are we going to have a team photo op here? While they might not be finishing 1-2 on track, Braun kind of rocking up to his fellow Navy liveried Camaro on the final lap of the race, and pulling now to about 4 seconds ahead of Simoncic. He's got this one under control. It's been fantastic after he stuck it on pole. He started out the front. He had a couple cars kind of following him and making sure to poke and prod and get him to sweat just a little bit, but apparently Devin is going to be cool under pressure, because despite having to make up a 6-second gap, he managed to regain that lead from way far behind.
It looks like Simoncic will hold the fastest lap of the race, but I mean, it is an incredibly narrow margin. This Camaro, the 2nd fastest car in the race, so not only does he have the overall pace over the course of the long run, he even had that sprint pace, and now he's just got a couple corners remaining.
Just down through the kink as the 2 of them fly past our cameras for the last time and into turn 9. The first race of the season for the Genisus Extreme Trans Am Racing Challenge by HRSC is going to be won by Devin Braun today in California.
Collects that checkered flag as he goes across the start-finish line. 70 laps here at Riverside, some of them on the concrete, some of them on the dirt, as Simoncic finishes in that 2nd place. And we got quite a ways to wait. It's about 40 seconds before Cantonen here. He's on the back straightaway with nobody around him.
But I have to give credit to him. That's going to be a podium for that Camaro, so well done, Tom D. Behind him, I think 8 cars going to be able to finish every lap, as this is our leader in the AM category, Mike Mallon, taking the victory there.
This is Bavenbeck here in this number 66 car. Looks like he will finish the day 2nd in that AM class, as Polyakov here in this number 07. He should finish 3rd in that class.
So that should wrap up our finishers for the most part. I believe Cantonen now finishing third as he crossed the line ahead of the great race from him here today, even if he was a bit far back. Certainly looks like the Camaro not only is the desired car, but it is quite quick out here at this first circuit. Matt Wright, what a run for a top 5 for one of the few Plymouth Barracudas, highest finishing Plymouth Barracuda out there. And then Kirsten, we saw on the Mustang, the highest finishing Mustang there in 6th position. Robillard, who certainly was Mr. Excitement today, be the last one across the line in that 8th position. So that does indeed wrap up our finishing cars of our 38. 27 managed to get to the finish line today. And I think that brings us to our results for this race. Fantastic stuff out there from everybody involved. We're going to start with the pro finishers, and Devin Braun is going to win this one by a gap of about 4 seconds in the end, as it is going to be Jerne Simonchik who finishes in second, Oskar Cantonen in P3, Tom D fourth, followed by Matt Wright in the 5th position. Nicholas Kirsten finishes P6, followed by Austin Birchfield, who we didn't see a lot of in the second half of the race, but gets a calm 7th over Jackson Robillard. Last driver to finish on the lead lap, Darren Andrews, was P9, and then Mantis Isganitis was 10th. Franek Gadrecki was up in the top 5 early on, but unfortunately just got tangled up in things, had to settle for 11th place. Larry Salmonen finishes in P12. And then you go to Nicholas Hillebrand, who finishes in the 13th position here today. From there, 14th goes to David Purchase, and a DNF for Celadon, unfortunately. So actually 26 cars that finished this race. Deaton Brush was behind him. Then you've got Gerard Ryan, and then all DNFs for pros from there on down. John Kenny, Jesper Pedersen, Robin DeVos, Liam Dolan, and Reese Gardner. Unfortunately, last of that pro class. That takes us to the AM category here. Joey, how did that one wrap up?
It was Mike Mallon in that number 29 winning the AM class in the Ford Mustang Boss 302. Then we had Bavenbeck in the number 66, finishing second place in AM. Igor Polyakov in that third, rounding out the podium in another Camaro. Chris Gordon's going to finish 4th in class. Steve Carman back in that number 69, finishing 5th. Mark Johnson in 6th. Paul Starsovs in 7th. Jonathan D finishing 8th. Bruno Chacon in 9th. Mamoni Fleur in 10th. And I believe there is a few more back here on the AM class page as well. Mike Honcho had his hands full all day long, finishing in 11th. Filippo Marazzi 12th. Chris Okuda in 13th. Steph Hermans 14th. And Mario Mariano in 15th.
Looks like we do have Devin with us, our winner here today in the overall. And I'd be curious to hear his thoughts on that strategy. Devin, you came out in second after that last pit stop, trying to chase down Jerne. I mean, did you feel confident that you could catch up and pass him?
Yes, absolutely. That's why I did it. So I knew I had 2 ways to finish the race, and I knew Jerne was already 1 step ahead on one of those ways because he had like 2 laps on me, I think. So I figured, right, I'm just going to do it my way. Mathematically, I was going to finish ahead, and it worked out.
These cars looked like they were just a real handful in the race. Saw them sliding around so much. How much were you having to manage the tires in this one? Was it possible to burn them out?
Yeah, absolutely, it was. So funny that you asked, because the whole setup was actually geared around keeping the tires alive. So minimum slip, minimum sliding, which is ironic because with these old cars, you just kind of want to slide. You want to go sideways.
Yeah, we saw plenty of that. So, what was the difference between the cars as well? It seemed like to us, and you kind of confirmed it when you caught up to him, that you had a little bit better straight line speed than that Pontiac.
Yeah, I think the straight line speed, I don't think that was actually that way the whole race. I'm pretty sure Yene actually damaged his car or something like that. He always had a little bit less straight line speed, but towards the end of the race, it was just a lot less. But it's also the final corner bank turn where our setup was just completely superior, where I always got like 3/10s on him. The rest of the track, he was usually quicker, unless he was on old tires. And yeah, so it was kind of balanced around the lap, actually, I think.
Well, we'll have a very different circuit next time going to Road America. Another one with a lot of long straights, but many more slower 90-degree corners. Do you think you'll be able to do just as well there?
Yeah, probably. I'm not actually sure how the cars compare in 90 degrees corners. We don't really have a lot of those here. And they're very different from these 180 ones that we have. But we'll see.
Well, again, congratulations on the victory. A well-run race, and thank you for the entertainment. Hopefully, we'll get to chat with you some more.
Thank you very much. It was great fun.
That was your winner, Devin Braun, here today. And it sounds like, I believe, I'll double check. I think we're going to be wrapping it up here. Checking with our director.
And, Joe, just to kind of give a few final thoughts here as the drivers are still filtering in, I loved seeing the Trans Am cars here on Riverside. I just thought that the combination was so much fun to watch. Not only that, but we had tons of great racing throughout the entire 70 laps today. So I just thought, recapping on today, it was a ton of fun and the competitors did a great job.
Yeah, agreed. So looks like Nico's with us. Joey has caught up with one of the mans that helps put this thing together.
Well, I was just singing the praises of the event and how well run it was, how awesome it was to watch these vintage cars around Riverside. I just got to say thank you so much because this was awesome to be a part of.
Yeah, I mean, nothing to thank me for. Thank you very much, guys, for a fantastic job commentating. And yeah, for this broadcast and bringing all of this to the people. Yeah, I'm glad that you guys all enjoyed it. That was, the big point for this series and, the events that'll come later on in this year.
So talking about later on in this year, we kick it off at Riverside. There was tons more tracks that we're going to, Lime Rock, Watkins Glen, to name a few. Is there maybe one that you are circling that says, oh man, this one's going to be a party?
Honestly, all of these tracks are absolutely fantastic. A couple of them are obviously, also the more modern take, but it's the same layout as they drove back in the day. But I think it's going to be absolutely crazy around Lime Rock Park, because if we have around 40 cars here, again, and, basically having that entire thing with the pit phase and everything, it's going to be a really, really crazy race. I'm really looking forward to that. And 99 laps, it's going to be like the days back in the American Le Mans series where they went there with multi-class racing.
Well, I mean, even the action today was nonstop between everybody on the racetrack. And I want to ask you about today because you had your hands full quite a bit, especially in the first half of the race. What did you find was probably the most challenging part about the 70 laps today?
Managing my suspension damage. I mean, honestly, overall, though, for this event, I think the most difficult part was the setup and everything, at least mentally. Racing is always a joy, especially with this group of people. We've built this up over the last year and the year before that with GP Labs HRSC. So, big shout out to Jake there for starting this entire hype for historic racing. But yeah, all this organization beforehand, getting to the point where we can say, hey, we've got this broadcasting deal, we've got the server set up, we've got the partnership with Storm Gang Simulations, who made these fantastic cars, who actually punted out an update for the mod just for us, so we could adjust the banners and stuff as well, so we could show this fantastic Genisus Extreme logo as well. And yeah, just everything falling into place. It's just an absolutely awesome feeling and experience. Obviously, the race itself didn't go too well for me today. I got a bit unlucky, but I couldn't be happier overall.
You know what? That's racing. Not all of the days are going to be the best days, but thank you so much for being such a huge part of this, really putting it on. So I know that 16th place wasn't what you wanted to see, but awesome event.
Yeah, thank you.
That was Nico Hillebrand. He was driving that number 71 Camaro here at Riverside today, Joe.
Yep, and certainly was giving us a lot of fun to watch himself. But before we go, we do want to remind you of what we've got in store for the rest of the year. Next one up is April 6th for the 250 miles of Elkhart Lake at Road America. We'll also head over the border to Canada for Circuit Mont Tremblant, then back across to the new northeast with Lime Rock Park. We'll stay up there for Bridgehampton, just going across to New York, and another one there on the East Coast with Watkins Glen, which is another favorite amongst drivers, and then, of course, wrap it up in July with Sonoma coming back to the West Coast. Certainly was a fun one. We were looking forward to this, Joey, and man, this delivered. This was an absolute hoot.
I mean, from the sounds of the cars, from the racetrack that doesn't exist anymore, and having all the different types of cars out there, I just thought it was so cool. And then we were just looking at that schedule and what's coming up next. A couple of my favorite racetracks, including Road America, putting these cars on that racetrack. I think that is going to be the party zone.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be fun watching them try to slam the brakes down into those corners, because those are long straightaways for these machines. But as much fun as we had, it's time to wrap up. So, of course, we want to thank the community, the HRSC, for bringing us on to broadcast this series, as well as our team today, Daniel and Joey. Make sure to tune in next time out at Road America, April 6th, where we'll be back for round 2. But until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.
Contact already, and the number 3 goes sideways fire into the wall. He's already bounced off the side of the car next to him. I'm not sure if they just wobbled around a little. Absolutely, I think that was